All right, I'd like to welcome everyone as we call our January 9th, 2018 meeting to order. Thank you, Sheriff. I'd like to welcome everyone again, and we've got a really good turnout tonight. I like to see that. That's one of the great things about small government is we're really open, and we enjoy seeing your faces. We love hearing your opinions, and it always helps us make better decisions. For those of y'all that do not know, I'm a University of Georgia graduate, so I'm a little black and blue after last night, so y'all take it easy on me during the comment period. With that being said, we'll move on and get started with our agenda announcements. I think item 2A has been removed from the agenda, the presentation of the North Carolina Division of Aging and Adult Services award, but we have a replacement, correct, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir. We have glad to have Mr. Patrick McConnell here with us tonight, representing the veterans in Macon County. And at this time, we didn't put this on the agenda because the whole time Patrick said, "Now it's going to try to be a surprise." So we have a nice surprise tonight that's going to be presented to one of our departments that provides a excellent service to the group of citizens in Macon County that have provided the ultimate in public service, our Veterans and Veterans Administration Department. So with that being said, and no further ado, Mr. McConnell, if you'll come up here, I think you got a little something you'd like to present.
Yes, sir. Thank you all very much for letting us do this. I was telling my friends a while ago, the last time I was in a room like this, I was facing a judge. But I won my case. We have been watching the Veterans Administration Office real closely here for a while. And I'm going to tell you, I would put the veteran service officers of Macon County up against any in North Carolina. They are good. When you go in and talk to them, it's a little different. They've got to have medical knowledge, a whole bunch of legal knowledge to come back, and they can't be afraid to get dirty. And our veteran service officers do that, and they don't take no for an answer. When we go to the VA and they come back and say, "This guy don't qualify," our veteran service officers say, "Wait a minute, we're going back to him. This ain't right." We go back in, and if I'm out during the day doing my duties, I have veterans come up to me all the time and say, "You know, thank you for referring us to the Veterans Administration Office." With that said, keep it short and sweet. If Lee and Christy would come up, we just have a little token appreciation from the veterans of Macon County. And they're fantastic. There is no better. I know this isn't much, but it's a token of our appreciation for what they do for us. And just keep it up, and I'm going to keep an eye on you. I gotta go to American Legion meeting, so we'll have some seats up for you.
I think just say that's to get any kind of recognition from veterans. That's more humbling than anything. Thank you. We
Well
love our
deserved.
dogs, so
Well
thank you.
deserved.
Thank you, ladies. Good job, ladies.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Very well deserved.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I failed to mention as I opened our meeting just a couple rules of procedure for us, and after we finish that, it made me think of it. If any of you need to get up and leave after your point of our agenda, please feel free to quietly do so. If you'd like to stay for the whole 2 or 3 hours that we're going to be here, we'd love to have you. You're welcome to it. I know those chairs are a little uncomfortable out there, so if you could also please silence your cell phones, we'd appreciate that. With that, we'll keep right on track. And let's all rise. We'll observe a moment of silence, and I'm going to ask Commissioner Higdon to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing to discuss the Macon County Soil and Erosion and Sedimentation Control Ordinance. I presume that's what the majority of you are here for based upon the quantity of people that have signed up to speak for it. As I mentioned when I opened, one of the great things about small government is it's easy to take input from the citizens of our county, and we appreciate that. And I can assure each and every one of you that we hear you, we listen to you, and we take your thoughts into consideration. Again, this will be a somewhat of a public meeting, so you're going to have the opportunity to speak. Go ahead and open the meeting. I ask that if you'll please, while you're speaking, please note civil discourse and respect for your fellow speakers, whether you agree with them or not. Hear their opinions out. And again, they'll appreciate your respect as they will give to you. There is a 3-minute time limit on your speaking time, and we'll let that fudge a little bit, but try, and I'll raise my hand and let you know when you're getting close to your time period. Again, we have several people to speak tonight, and we also have a lot of other county business before the board. We're not here to criticize each other. We're here to respectfully discuss our opinions and how we might move forward with an ordinance in Macon County. I'd also like to, I'll go ahead and I'm going to let Derek Rowland, our county manager, open this up, and I've got a couple other comments before we get started. So Derek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board, thank you. And as the chairman said, you know, that's one of the benefits of small government, is being able to interact and hear the people, which is exactly what's going to occur tonight. And again, one of the very fortunate benefits I think we have living in Macon County. What I want to do before we start the public hearing very briefly is go through the timeline that has led up to where we are here tonight with respect to the proposed amendment. And also I would like to go over a little kind of where we're headed in the future after this public hearing, kind of some next steps for consideration to the board. And lastly, I would like to provide a few comments that I hope can clear up. I have received a few comments prior to the meeting, and I feel like that with some research and discussion that I've had with the county attorney, as well as Jack Morgan, our Director of Planning, Permitting, and Development, hope to answer, hopefully, or help answer some of those questions that I've received prior to the meeting. So just to start with a timeline, on February 14th, if you'll recall, that was right after our budget work session last year, Commissioner Higdon had brought up during the budget work session that we would like to evaluate the grading license program in Macon County. The grading license program was originally started in 2008, and it was made possible through the unanimous vote of the Board of Commissioners at that time. So with the motion by Commissioner Beal, we suspended the current grading license program that was in effect and passed it along to the planning board so that they could discuss it, look through it, and evaluate it as directed by the Board of Commissioners. Then, in looking back through the minutes, Chairman Tate commented on the importance of the vetting process when reviewing this program that has been in place. And that's exactly what we're doing here tonight, a continuance of that vetting process. When you move to May 16th, the Board of Commissioners voted unanimously for the Planning Board to take the grading contractor's license program through a process with some public input. And that's, again, quotes from per the direction of the liaison, Mr. Carl Gillespie, and Jack Morgan, the Director of Planning, Permitting, and Development. Now, when it was passed to the Planning Board, their evaluation of this program that was in effect included months of discussions, not only on the licensure program, but the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance in its entirety. I know Chester Jones, our legal counsel, worked with the Planning Board as they went through looking at this program and then moving forward with their recommendations. In addition to the Planning Board meetings, the Planning Board held a public input or question and answer session on June 15th, in which all licensed grading contractors that currently held a Macon County grading contractor's license received a letter, an invite to this public input session. It was also posted in the courthouse. Moving on to July of 2017, the Planning Board voted at their meeting to inform the Macon County Board of Commissioners of their approval to continue the Macon County grading license program by adding the recommendations that they would propose into the existing sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. And at that time, Mr. Jack Morgan presented those recommendations to the board. There were 9 of these recommendations, including the recommendation to move this program from out on its own to under the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. On August 8th, Jack Morgan presented again, we discussed the recommendation of the Planning Board to the Macon County Board of Commissioners, and following this presentation, a discussion was held in which County Attorney Chester Jones asked the board to consider this draft a new small portion of Section 153, which is the county's sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. We were advised at that time that we also needed to review this material in light of the full ordinance, which contains important definitions. And again, the Planning Board voted to send it to the board on July 27th. Jack Morgan presented their recommendations to this board on August 8th. December 12th of 2017, we continued our discussion on licensure requirements and the incorporation of the same into the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. Jack Morgan again spoke with us. We heard a few comments at that meeting concerning this topic, and the Board of Commissioners voted 4-1 to approve holding the public hearing at the January meeting. So here we are tonight. This public hearing is the first opportunity that this board has had to discuss publicly the revised sedimentation and erosion control ordinance in its entirety, as this will be the first time that this board has discussed, when I say it's in entirety, this will be the first time the board's had an opportunity to discuss it with the amendment included. Until now, when Jack had presented it, it was into a list of bullet points. Since then, Chester has went through and incorporated those bullet points and actually put it in the ordinance. So this is the first we're seeing it, giving the public a chance to comment on it tonight. During Chester's additional research, and he'll speak to this later, he found some things as he was going through that, some technical changes that need to be made prior to doing anything with the document. I think that we were looking into and all aware of the fact that we were going to have to check. This is a state modeled ordinance. The sedimentation and erosion control ordinance, again, which we're simply putting the amendment into that ordinance, is a state modeled ordinance. Thus, it will have to be approved by the state of North Carolina, and we'll have to receive confirmation of that from them prior to being able to have a vote of adoption. So again, before that state review, we cannot have a vote to adopt this ordinance. The public hearing, it's intended to accomplish exactly what it says. It's an opportunity for the public to be heard. And the planning board, through its exercises and its meetings, of course, all meetings are open to the public. They've spoken with the grading contractors, and they've had their public input session on these recommendations. Now it's time for the Board of Commissioners to hold their public input session and hear the public's thoughts and comments on this proposed amendment to the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. Following the public hearing tonight, we'll evaluate all the comments that we receive in light of the amendment that's being proposed. We'll evaluate those public comments as well as comments from Jack, if he gives testimony as the Director of Planning, Permitting, Development, any planning board member that's here and would like to speak. Take all these comments as well as legal counsel's comments and the Board of Commissioners and take them back and evaluate them. Upon completion of this evaluation and the decision whether or not to incorporate changes to what we have now, we will then send it to the state of North Carolina. So before we send that, again, that's got to be approved by the state, any change we make, because it's that state modeled ordinance. We're going to take the comments we receive here tonight from everyone in the room, evaluate those changes in light of this amendment prior to sending that document on to the state of North Carolina. And I realize it's a long drawn out process, and y'all are probably getting tired of hearing me talk already, but it's a valuable process that it ensures everybody gets an opportunity to be heard. And I think, you know, that rings true as I was looking back, and I mentioned earlier I was citing the importance of the vetting process. We need a process with public input. Those are all quotations because they came directly from members of the Board of County Commissioners. And again, I think that we have to remember this is a process, and this is where we're at in that process, is something that this Board of Commissioners has never taken lightly, and that is an opportunity to hear what the public has to say. Similarly, it's an opportunity for us to share the facts with the public of what is being proposed. And again, I have received some correspondence following our last meeting that seemed to suggest that this is a new ordinance, or that the fundamental purpose of this ordinance, the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance, that its fundamental purpose has been changed in its entirety. I've received emails that range from the question of, well, I can't put a swing set up on my property if this passes. I think I've heard comments. I think we had one at the last meeting. Can't put a shovel in the ground on my own property if this amendment passes. And I think in taking those comments and looking at them, it's important that we go back to that August 8th meeting, and Chester had mentioned, ask the board to consider this draft a new small portion of Section 153 of the county's Code of Ordinances. He advised the commissioners that they needed to review this new material in light of the full ordinance that contains important definitions. And so while we look at these questions and go back to the definitions of the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance, first page of that ordinance, Section 153.02, the purpose of this state modeled ordinance, as you will find, is to regulate land disturbing activity in Macon County. That is the purpose of the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. Now, what is a land disturbing activity? And I'm reading right out of the ordinance definitions. A land disturbing activity is any use of the land by any person in residential, industrial, educational, institutional, or commercial development, highway and road construction, and maintenance that results in a change of natural cover or topography that may cause or contribute to sedimentation. So you got to change the natural cover of the topography, and you have to contribute, the activity you're performing has to contribute to sedimentation. It's got to
May
meet.
contribute.
It's got to meet to that
May
two-part
contribute
test.
is the definition, may contribute.
So the definition of sedimentation means the process by which sediment resulting from accelerated erosion has or is being transported off the side of the land disturbing activity or into a lake or natural water course. So there you've got the definition of land disturbing activity, the definition of sedimentation, which that land disturbing activity, you have to meet that two-part test, and this ordinance that regulates this has been in effect since 2001. The requirements surrounding the grading license program, which we're discussing here tonight, is the only thing that has been added to that 2001 State Model Sedimentation Erosion Control Ordinance in this amendment process. Nothing else has been added to or taken away from this ordinance. And with that being said, the questions that I had received via email and comments received at the previous meeting, I can say right now with 100% certainty that any activity a homeowner is currently conducting on their property which is not regulated by this ordinance today will not be regulated by this ordinance following the passage of this amendment. Again, we have done nothing to change the purpose of this ordinance. We have done nothing to change the definition which comprise the purpose of this ordinance. The grading license program has been in effect since 2008. Again, it was unanimously approved. Many of the things you're seeing, the requirements that accompany this grading license program, such as the test, the fees associated with the program, they're already in place. Now there are minor changes to some of that, but the program has been in place since 2008, and so the people have been participating in this program. Again, the Macon County licensed grading contractors were invited to the public input session. And with that being said, again, I just wanted to take some time because some of these questions, like what will I be able to do with my property? Will I be able to build a swing set? Will I be able to put my daughter's kiddie pool in the yard? Will I be able to build a 6-inch flower bed? The fact of the matter is, if this was not a land disturbing activity prior to the adoption of this amendment into this ordinance, it's not going to be a land disturbing activity after the adoption of this ordinance. And I think that's where a lot, those questions anyway, had gotten the water had gotten muddied. And so I just wanted to take an opportunity for everybody out there to clear that up. This amendment was added into this ordinance. The fundamental purpose of this ordinance was not changed. I've had conversations not only with Jack, but members of the planning board who are here and will attest to the fact tonight that the primary intent, as they were going through and making the recommendations for this amendment, was simply to substantiate something that we had been doing procedurally since 2008. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would like to turn the public hearing back over to you. I would again just say that with that, I just hope to give you a timeline, a little bit of an idea of what has led into this process, where we are heading when we come out of this process tonight, and just a fact that I have discussed with our county attorney and as well as our administrator and members of the planning board, that I felt like that would clear up some of those questions we were getting, so we could perhaps the public hearing could focus on the amendment itself and have a discussion on that, which again is not a new ordinance or is not changing the purpose of this ordinance. It is just substantiating a procedure that we have had in effect since 2008.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir.
Board, any questions for Derek?
Chris, was you going to mention the substantial changes to the license requirements before we start?
I think that Jack's here tonight, and he was going to, if we have any, or we can do that right now.
You can just clear that up and say
Go ahead, let's
that
go ahead.
yeah.
If you're ready, or y'all are.
Yeah, if y'all ready.
I'll do that first.
Would it be appropriate for us to comment to Derek's thing, or wait until the end, or how?
Yeah, that's fine.
Either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only
We're here
question
to
I've got
discuss.
is I see this as a two-pronged amendment of the grading license. That's we've discussed that, but the exclusions, exceptions in the proposed amendment is what raises my questions, Derek, is that in the original grading license program, there was no mention of a landowner doing his own, whatever, land disturbing activity on his property. And I asked Jack in the meeting if a guy wanted to build a cross-tie wall on his property, would that qualify as land disturbing? And his response was yes. So if you go with the definition of land disturbing activity in the complete ordinance, and then you look at this where a private landowner who owns this property may have a little backhoe or a shovel or whatever, and he wants to do something that qualifies as a land disturbing activity, that one definition, then he's got to go take this open book test as worded in the amendment, and then sign an affidavit that he will not sell or transfer that property for a year. What's the history of that? How does that work in there? How did that fit? If that's not a change to the original grading license program, how do we address that?
Right, and again, there are some, and Jack, if you could address the questions, kind of give the planning board kind of the discussion that ensued on each of these. There are minor changes, as I said, to the grading license program itself. There is no fundamental change to the ordinance, but the program that we've known since 2008, there are some changes to it that have been put into this ordinance. Now, still, it does not change what is a land disturbing activity and what is not. For the land disturbing activity, and as Jack will attest to, I think you've got to first put it through that two-pronged test. Do you remove the natural ground cover? Do you change the topography? And do you contribute to sedimentation, which is the silt or sediment leaving the site? So I think,
Or going into a river.
or going into a river or natural water course. So I think all that, and it's in this ordinance, if you'll read, when you read through it, and I know, Paul, you and I have discussed, it puts the ordinance it puts the property owner in the half acre or more. If you kind of look, there's one section when you're talking about a half acre or more that says it is the responsibility of the person conducting the land disturbing activity to come into the building inspections office to meet with the
that's
ordinance
covered.
administrator. That's covered. The same kind of thing. I think it is right now, and I think the intent, and I'm certainly not meaning to speak on behalf of the planning board, but I think the intent was to continue with the spirit of how this was being enforced procedurally, but not to change the substance, what was considered land disturbing activity. No changes have been made to the purpose or the definition that make up that purpose. So I think up until now, and that's when, you look at the questions like, well, can I put a swing set up? Well, if you were going to put a swing set up before, would you have went in and talked to the administrator of this ordinance? I think if that retaining wall is on a sloped bank with a property down below it, that it's clearly, and you're removing that ground cover, and it's clearly going to create sedimentation, which is leaving the site, then it's a different conversation than if you own 10 acres and that retaining wall is in the middle of a 10-acre field and is not going to contribute to sedimentation leaving the site. So it's all relative, and this ordinance it builds in the discretion of that administrator to have those conversations with the individual as they're going to come in and submit the plan. And up until now, I can't think of any complaints that the process that we have in place, while it hasn't been substantiated in the ordinance, I can't think of any, or I know I haven't had any complaints of an onerous application of this ordinance by the administrator. Jack was here when this was in effect in 2008, or had you just came back?
Came back in 2002.
Jack had been here when this was in effect, and he saw he saw it come into effect the first time, and has been working and furthering the procedure since it was put in place in 2008. And I don't think with this, Jack, it was your intention to change the overall spirit of what you've been doing since 2008.
Well, intent needs to be defined.
Right.
Though. You can't.
Well, Jack, could you speak to any discussion the planning board had, I guess, leading up to kind of the the question that Mr. Higdon had.
Mr. Higdon's question is what I'm addressing. It's like the old saying, talk's cheap. But making a repair on somebody else's property or getting sedimentation out of a stream is not cheap. So our thought with this owner contractor thing was that we'd rather have the conversation with the owner before he does something that does get him in trouble, that doesn't cost him anything to discuss it, doesn't cost him anything to be able to do this. We just want a knowledge-based test that you're going to be able to capably keep that said soil on your property. That was the intent of this. The reason it came up at all is the majority of our complaints are based on people that did something on their own property. It's not these contractor guys. They know what they're doing. They're not a problem. We have
Why do you need a
some,
license then?
I'm sorry,
Why do you need a license if they're not a problem?
well, most of them got a state license anyway.
Okay.
So, but we do have a lot of people that, a lot of contractors, I will say a lot, I'll say several, that operate basically under the $30,000 threshold, which requires state license. This would give some validity to them, because if homeowner asks, well, what kind of license you have, or what kind of certification do you have to do this kind of work? Well, I don't have anything. That's not a good answer, especially if you need the work. So that's the reason for the license right there, primarily, as well as educational. This is more an educational opportunity than it is an enforcement opportunity, is the way I see it, Mr. Higdon. The planning board was pretty much the same way. We've talked about all kinds of education. Who was it came presented the H2O program that they're trying to establish in Western North Carolina, where it's a group of counties offer this education to people. So that's in my opinion, Mr. Higdon, the purpose of this. I don't know if that answered your question or not. And I will say, while I've got the podium for just a second, the planning board worked hard. They debated this back and forth amongst themselves with the contractors, with the attorney president at the meetings. And I've got a lot of emails and phone calls, discussion from the planning board members about how to proceed with this, what their thoughts were. So this was not done in the dark. It was not done overnight. It's not done underhandedly. None of it.
Jack, there's been so much innuendo and just plain old, stuff put out there that's just not true, that this board's looking at this ordinance. The reason I was here when it was originally passed. It was originally passed not for most of these boards sitting in this room. For these people go out here renting track hoses, which we battled to, you remember it well. Renting the track hose, renting the equipment, going to the piece of property, and absolutely running not only it, but the neighbor's property.
Right.
And it was several cases like that. And this was intended to be an educational process to where those people had to come in and they had somebody need to know what was going on before it was too late. You stick a big track on the ground, it can be too late in about 2 hours. As we found out. That was the gist of the soil erosion when it first started. That was the gist of it. And then his statement, and it's like Derek says, if you read the ordinance, there's nothing really changes you. I think if the owner, I don't know if, I've been in the business about 38 years, I don't know of no owner, maybe one, that done his own grading for his house that was not a grading contractor. And that's really what this speaks to, is situations like that. You're talking about a half acre, nothing has really changed in the definitions where we started from. Now the license requirements have changed, they're gonna make it more simple, I think.
Yes.
We hope, that's the whole idea of the thing, but the thing about you can't plant a bush, you can't do this, you can't do this on your own property, that's just been blown way out of proportion, and people not getting licensed. I even got a letter saying that the people who done England didn't get their license, the grading license. Well, they did. And a lot of people don't need grading license. The landfill, for instance, they don't need a grading license, true? They're under the state regulations. So, and if you own, and I think you go to get into this, but if you own a state grading license, I think we all agree there's no reason to have a Macon County res
Correct.
license, and that's in here. So, it's been a lot of stuff that we couldn't answer because this is the place to answer those questions for these people sitting in this room.
Right.
So I just want to throw that in. Little history.
And that license is not recognized anywhere except in Macon County.
That's right.
And
That's exactly right. That's what it was intended to do. We can't help what goes on in Jackson County. We want to try to protect what little water we got here.
if there's people in, like Nantahala, people come out of Andrews, do the work, Highlands, a lot of people out of Sapphire. It's gonna take a lot of, chasing people down. And the initial program was never I don't think it was ever enforced adequately. You said it saved a lot of streams and stuff, but I know grading not grading, except.
The idea was not enforcement when you started, was it, Jack?
No.
But it's in there, it's.
Well,
I
but
mean,
yeah,
if
but
you
it
put
was,
things
the
on black
idea
and
was to
white,
educate more than it was to enforce.
if it's in black and white, that's, to me, is the intent.
Jack, is the discussion here just centered upon locations? If somebody from another county comes in, they'll probably need it. How does this work with the two municipalities within our county?
If we have jurisdiction within those municipalities, it would apply. The town of Highlands has their own erosion control and sedimentation program, so we have no jurisdiction there for that
But you would in Franklin.
at this time.
If Franklin wants to start their own, that's certainly up to them.
Yes.
Is a land disturbing activity more than a half acre?
It, by the definition, and I didn't make this definition up, Mr. Higgins, you gotta change the topography, remove the cover, and you may contribute to sedimentation.
But
There's
it
some,
doesn't apply to, it applies to less than a half acre. It applies to anything you do on your property that removes a natural ground cover or changes the topography.
you apply the definition.
And
results in sedimentation, leaving your property and going to someone else's property, or entering a stream, or a natural water course, or lake.
May contribute. These are legal definitions.
Thank you, Jack. Any further questions here?
Jack, in the time you've enforced this ordinance and went through this ordinance, do you, in your opinion, is the changes that have been made, not to the ordinance, but when you take what we've been doing in practice and putting it into the ordinance, is it going, in your opinion, to result in an increase in your workload, or are these?
I feel it probably decreases because knowledgeable people are less likely to commit a violation. Do a lot of people that want to do work on their property, they know what this trout stream buffer is? Do they know what a trout stream buffer is? How far it is? Do they understand watershed development regulations that are state mandated? Do they understand DOT requirements if you put a driveway into the DOT? There's a lot of things that we answer during the application process that keeps us from having a workload out in the field.
And is that kind of why with this, and we've talked about some of the changes, when the planning board had sent the invites to the grading contractors, is the reason those were sent to the grading contractors is because this is primarily who's affected by this?
It will affect them, yes. Like the old way we did it, everybody had to have a license, but if you got a state license with the new program, you wouldn't have to. But we wanted their opinion on this license program because they are grading contractors in this county. So we needed their input.
Anything further before we open up the public portion? All right, we're going to look forward to taking some comments from the public now. I'm just going to remind you a few things that I mentioned earlier. Again, this is a public hearing, so it offers everyone in the county or whoever wants to come and speak the opportunity to speak to this, either for it or against it, or impartial, or maybe some thoughts on improvement, or again, removal completely. I think has been stated by Derek. Chester, if you'd like to weigh in on this comment, this board's not going to be taking any action on this tonight, other than some discussion, because I think there's a lot more to it than what we're going to be able to do tonight, correct? Because of the
I think
state
that is
issues.
correct. Furthermore, you need state approval, not just review, but approval. And I suspect as a result of this hearing tonight, there will be some ideas brought to the board's attention that may need to be incorporated. We're in a process right now. I envision the likelihood of an additional public hearing on this matter before it would actually be adopted.
Good. I like that term, process. Thank you. Thank you.
Making sausage.
Again, 3-minute time limit. Just trying. I've been to enough of these since I've been on this board to see that sometimes civil discourse does not always happen. But just please try and be respectful of everyone, and just like we're being up here. We're here to hear your opinions. We want to know whether you're for it, against it, and why. The why is the big reason. We want to know things we can improve, or again, maybe not have it at all. We want to know. We're here to discuss. So with that being said, let's get started. First on the list is Mr. Howell Jacobs. Again, welcome, Howell.
Thank you very much. I'd like to comment on our veterans that was here a while ago, what they did for the freedom of our country. And it seemed like anymore the government is taking away part of our freedoms, the county's taking away our freedoms. If we want to do certain things, we have to come to the county courthouse to say, hey, can I do this or can I do that? Different ordinances. And I know this sediment and erosion control, the ordinance is kind of questionable, and I'd like to ask Paul if these new amendments to these ordinances, how is that going to benefit Hal Jacobs and Nantahala? Any at all? If I want to do a little bit of work on my property, I got to come to Franklin, go through run the gauntlet to do certain things. And I'd ask you this too. If we use just the old, put in the action the ordinances of the old ordinance of the sediment control, would everything be just as good rather than adding all these new amendments? Is the old ordinances, why didn't they work if they're put into action, make sure that it's done? Would the new amendments
I don't think we do.
help anything?
I don't think so.
That's all I've got to say. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Carl. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty reading the name. It looks like is it Danny? Is that correct? Your last name, sir?
Smeltzer.
Smeltzer, thank you. Are you a doctor?
Not her. Nor am I an excavator.
I do
It's a good
have
signature.
some concerns about the amendments to the ordinance, and that was, they were talking about earlier about me having to sign an affidavit if I wanted to. I live very, well, right on Otter Creek, so I want to protect that and do everything I can to keep it clean because I have trout in there. So with that in mind, anything and everything I do is going to be to protect the stream. Now, if I have dead trees, I have a little over 3 acres there. If I have dead trees and what have you that I need to clear out, it's 6/10 of an acre. Then I have to come over here and take tests, or I don't have to take the test.
You don't need to do nothing.
I don't do anything.
No.
Okay, but I do. Do I have to sign an order?
No, if it's over, are you disturbing the land?
I'm sorry.
Are you gonna disturb the land?
Yeah, I'm gonna take up roots, stumps, and stuff like that, and make a lawn
Eric, you
in
want me to
it.
explain that?
If it's not just like today, if it's not a land disturbing activity today, as we said earlier, which is what this ordinance regulates, if it's not a land disturbing activity today, it's not gonna be a land disturbing activity after these amendments are passed.
Okay, all right, then I misunderstood the whole thing.
Now, second part to that, if this is a land disturbing activity, then you would have to take the grade, you would have to get the license.
Yeah, I rent a track over a
But
bobcat and
until,
pick up stumps.
right, but until that the administrator reviews, or reviews or looks at if it's going to be close to the creek where you feel it would be close enough, hey, there could potentially be sediment leaving and going into the creek, then, you know, you would need to take that to the administrator if you felt like the project was going to get to that scale where it would create a potential to cause sedimentation or erosion into a natural water course.
And I do it myself.
Sure.
Then I have to take the test, right?
No,
Yeah.
not if it's not land disturbing activity. And that,
Yeah, okay.
no, I mean,
I don't understand land disturbance.
Right.
Anytime I tear the ground up on top, that's land disturbance, right?
a land disturbing activity is any use of the land by any person in residential, industrial, educational, institutional, or commercial development, highway and road construction and maintenance that results in a change in the natural cover or topography and may cause or contribute to sedimentation.
Right.
If you're cutting trees down,
Taking up stumps.
if you're taking up stumps,
Yeah,
then
these
is
are
the
dead
sediment
trees.
leaving, is the sediment going into the creek when you're taking the stumps up?
It could be. I've got to put a buffer up there and keep it from doing so until I get grass and what have you there.
Well, right now, if you come in and go over this with the administrator, and he says, hey, yeah, this is gonna meet the definition as said in this ordinance of land disturbing activity, then yes.
Then I've got to sign an affidavit saying that I can't sell my property.
That would be a part of this amendment as proposed, yes, sir. Now,
My question to you then is how many of you in here know for a fact that you're gonna be alive in 6 months? You're asking me to sign that thing for a year, saying I can't sell my property, I can't transfer it, I can't do anything with it for a year. I don't have a clue what's gonna go on in 6 months.
Right.
Or my family has to deal with in 6 months or something like that. To me, that's really kind of, I don't know whether that stand up in court, to be honest with you, I really don't. And as far as controlling it all or maintaining it, you're charging fees for people to come over here, take these licenses and what have you, right? I'm talking about the contract. In other words, you're gonna have to keep up with that. And from Highlands to where I am and then to Hala, it's gonna take a lot of people driving the roads, making sure people aren't, taking advantage of your ordinance. I think, personally. Plus in Macon, where I'm in, everybody or anybody that I have anything to do with, do work for me is gonna be from Bryson City or Robbinsville or Andrews. And each one of those in a different county. Are y'all going to go to those people in different counties and make sure that they have the same, or that they come over here and take these same tests, if the job is under 30,000. So there's a lot to that. It's not just, we're going to do this and that's it.
All right. Thank you, Danny. Good
Thank you.
comments. Good comments. Thank you. Thank you, Carl. Randy Shutt.
Gentlemen, with all due respect, I'm having a really hard time hearing. Me too. Is those microphones hooked up?
You having a hard time hearing the speaker?
Thank you, gentlemen, for allowing me to speak on this again. I have several major concerns on this thing. And the more I read, it seems like the more I get confused. From what I read on this new proposal, that any land disturbing activity, don't matter the cost, is we're going to have to come in and take a test or either get grading license or whatever it does. And I've got several different tracts of property and I do improvements constantly on them. I don't want to run to Franklin every time I decide to flatten out a little piece of ground and make it look better or do something like that. So I'm very concerned about what I can do on my own property. And the Macon County Soil Erosion Ordinance says we can clear up to half an acre without an erosion control plan. I'm concerned that you're gonna ask me to come in and get a grading license or take the test and pass the test just to do little projects on my own land. And it's I think we're going a little bit overboard on a lot of this stuff, but everybody I know takes a lot of pride in having their property works. And I've seen very few bad operators come through Nantahala and make messes. You build a name, you get a reputation, a good work, and that's who people are going to hire. And under that exception on that my property owners being penalized for doing improvement projects in their own land, I care a lot about my property, and it looks like most everyone also does. A signed affidavit saying I will not sell my property for 1 year after improvements is done is ridiculous. It sounds to me like a dictatorship instead of democracy. Okay, in case of emergency, I've got a personal driveway. It's about a half mile long, and if I was to have a slide on that driveway and I had an emergency at my house with one of my family members, do you expect me to come over here and get a grading permit before I move that slide to get an ambulance or a fire truck in? It's just going too far. I see a lot of common sense not put into this thing, and I hope we can shave some of these things off of this thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shook.
Thank you.
Kathy, I'm sorry, I can't reach you. What's your last name?
Tinsley.
Tinsley, thank you.
I'm Kathy Tinsley. I'm vice chair of the planning board. Joe Deal is the chair. He called me today and said he couldn't be here. I want to thank Derek for giving us that background because of the time frame of how we did this, but it was that in the late winter, early spring, we were asked as a planning board to look at the licensure program. And in June is when we met with contractors and talked with them, the ones that were there. And in July, we kept tossing this around and formulated the new part that you see in the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance. As we talked to the contractors, it felt to us like most of them were in favor of doing this program if more bite could be put into it, if it could be lifted up a little bit from what it had been and mean a little bit more to them. As I'm on the planning board, after I think about our mission statement, one of the first things that came to mind, as I said in that meeting, is asking the contractors, does this help you? Have you had situations where it really helped you to have this license? And some of them indeed said yes, that it did. Gave them some credibility. So that meant something to me on the personal level as I listened to their comments. I was surprised. I'm an antique. I'm not on social media, so I was really surprised that this had gone this far with, and maybe it's true the planning board needs to go back and revisit some of this definition of land disturbing activities. I don't know about that, but I just felt like we were focusing on one thing, looking at the contractor licensing program, and I think we came up with a good solution. You look at these things from your own personal background, and I know I've been privileged to see the work of just great Macon County contractors, and I don't want to do anything to hurt them. So that meant a lot to me. And then I'm a former teacher. When I hear the word test, my hackles kind of go up, because I'd taught lots of young men that I knew could get out there and do a great job grading and building roads, but I was worried about this test aspect. So I got a copy of the test and I looked at it, and I learned that it was open book. And as I say, you know, that was just my my radar kind of went up on the whole test thing. But as I looked at it, I showed it to one contractor. He did not think it was you know, an onus on anybody to, you know, that they should have that knowledge as they went in to do the work. So again, kind of surprised at all the new things that have come out after we've talked about this, but I feel like placing it where we did in the sedimentation and erosion control ordinance just adds to the validity of the program. And again, we were trying to give this thing a little bit more status, possibly, and we're focusing on the licensure program itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Wallace.
Well, as you ones are well aware, many people are questioning this proposed amendment. For starters, do we have erosion control problems in our county that are not already covered by state regulations? What problem is this proposed amendment meant to address? Is it erosion and sedimentation, or occupational licensure, or what exactly? Who is it designed to protect, and what is the likelihood that it will do so? It addresses monetary value of work less than $30,000, but isn't monetary value as a determinant rather arbitrary? Will a state license contractor required for work above $30,000 also need a county license for jobs under $30,000? How much soil can be disturbed, and by whom, and what kind of soil, and on what degree of slope? And who decides the potential, the May word, the potential for erosion and sedimentation? Do we have a soil scientist on staff in the county? Who will enforce violations? Who will decide if a $500 per day penalty is issued? And is that a fine for disturbance of soil, or for being unlicensed, or for refusing to take a test? What is it for? Has there been a cost projection for actually administering these required tests as well as enforcement for every citizen who wants to disturb soil on their own property? Does the required test for a county grading license apply to someone who wants to plow up an acre of soil to plant elderberries to sell at the flea market, or to construct a goat lot, or a hog wallow, or a half-acre family cemetery? Why would you want to test, threaten, and manipulate someone ahead of an activity rather than dealing after the fact with the minuscule number of people who actually do cause erosion, penalizing them for any actual damage they've caused? Are you sure that you can legally require someone to not sell or even advertise their property for sale for some arbitrary length of time, regardless of its condition? Isn't that some kind of violation of individual property rights? Macon County has in place a number of protective programs that benefit long-time property owners here, including present use value taxation, which is one of the most beneficial aspects of property ownership in our county, a program that contributes to stability and historic preservation of agriculture and forestry and our environment. Also valuable for property owners is the VAD program, VAD, Voluntary Agricultural District, a program offered by our county's Soil and Water Conservation Office whereby a property owner, through deeds in the courthouse and public notice signage provided by the Soil and Water Conservation Office, can notify the public, neighbors, and potential buyers that your property is agricultural and that you will be engaging in commonly accepted agricultural practices involving noisy machinery and the use of products that some non-farmers might find disturbing. This is the kind of county government we need, the kind that looks out for our well-being without micromanagement of our livelihood and threats of fines. And I urge all landowners to look into these programs. This proposal, however, as now written, this amendment, tied to the rest of it, is a solution in search of a problem. It's poorly written, vague, and open to multiple interpretations. The intention might be good, even admirable, but it has no clear rationale or focus. Ostensibly, it is about prevention of erosion and sedimentation, but in effect, it's about revenue generation and occupational licensure. It's an exercise in arbitrariness and governmental overreach of the worst kind, the kind that just creeps up on you and hogties you. This proposal is largely unnecessary and is more of an impediment than a benefit to our county. This proposal needs to be scrapped, or at least seriously rewritten, clarified, and refocused as to purpose and implementation in a manner that respects and protects the personal property rights of our citizens. We live in a beautiful rural environment, and we are well aware of the consequences of mountain living, including natural disasters such as the Peaks Creek debris flow and the human-caused wildflower disaster. And now we must work to protect our property rights from such dire consequences as this ill-conceived and ill-advised proposal. Thank you.
David Culpepper.
Gentlemen, thank you. Have we established that this regulates land disturbing activity under a half an acre? Is that clear?
No.
Have we established that this 153.23 licensure requirements will affect people doing land disturbing activity under 1/2 acre?
We're discussing it tonight.
Mr. Jones, you wrote the ordinance.
No, I didn't write it.
You didn't write this amendment? Did you give legal counsel to, if it establishes, if this regulates land disturbing activity under 1/2 acre?
Did I give legal counsel?
No, will you give us legal counsel?
I will give this board legal counsel.
Okay. Well, the board member asked Mr. Jones the question of if this regulates land disturbing activity under 1/2 acre. Because that's how you guys are selling it. I mean, this might have been a good intention, but a lot of you good commissioners who I like, and I'm the bad guy here, you're going after me pretty hard, because I'm going after you pretty hard. It's not well written. It's just not. And I'm sorry to be the bad guy, because here in a couple weeks, I'm going to have to start working with you real hard on some projects that I want to help the town and the county get done.
Are you representing the town here tonight, David? Or
No, sir, I'm not. I'm representing as a citizen of Macon County.
I just wondered.
I mean, can anybody answer the question if this regulates land disturbing activity under 1/2 acre?
Did you read the definition?
Potentially. Potentially. We're still discussing that tonight.
Can you ask your attorney representative for his legal counsel?
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Go ahead.
I've already asked him. He won't answer me.
Continue on. We'll get to it. Go ahead.
I mean, that's my question. I mean, I think a lot of
Justin,
people
you wanna answer?
have covered it already.
I'll be happy to answer.
Sure, go ahead.
I think that the proposed amendment could well result in situations where this amendment at least would apply to situations of less than a half acre. If it is a land disturbing activity that is in fact as defined by the ordinance.
This is left up to an administrator too, and this carries a $500 per day fine to your constituents. Let that sink in. This is an arbitrary definition that's to be interpreted by an administrator that carries a $500 per day fine. This is serious, and that's why I'm making such a big deal out of it. Deliberate. Think about this. Think this through. Read it. Understand it. These are legal definitions. I hated to have to interrupt here twice, but they're legal definitions. This man's an attorney. People who are attorneys will take somebody and rake them over the coals using this ordinance. If the land use administrator thinks it's a land disturbing activity at $500 a day, it can also become a class 2 misdemeanor. You could face jail time. Here in a society where we're trying to get people to use their hands, get them back to the land, we're trying to get shop classes and hands-on classes back in high schools. Here we're trying to limit people from actually using their hands and using their land. I've done land disturbing activity. Some of the most content days of my life are after I've looked at my yard and landscaped it and I am beat and I'm about to fall over and my feet hurt. But I look what I've done and I say, man, I've done a good job and I'm tired. That's rewarding in life. And we're taking that away from people one ordinance at a time. And it's wrong. If you want to regulate soil erosion and sedimentation, enforce the existing ordinance. It is extensive and intensive and prescribes fines for people who violate it. We don't need a grading license program that forces people to sign their rights to their property away, take a test, and that can fine them $500 per day at the discretion of an administrator. An administrator. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks. Ben Lassiter.
Thank you all. My comments are general, but they are brief. I want to thank you all for your service to Macon County, its citizens, and its natural resources. That's kind of what this, at the core, is all about. For over 20 years, the Little Tennessee Watershed Association, Land Trust for the Little Tennessee, and now Mainspring Conservation Trust has worked to conserve the waters of the Little Tennessee River and its tributaries, as well as the lands surrounding these waters. As you know, sediment is the leading pollutant to our mountain streams and rivers. The primary goal of many of Mainspring's conservation and restoration projects is to minimize sediment input into our streams. Mainspring supports sound land management practices such as those promoted in this ordinance. We encourage the county to continue taking the necessary steps to protect these clear mountain waters that provide ideal fish habitat, drinking water, and recreation by keeping them free of sediment and other pollutants. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ben. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak that's not signed up? Approach. Your name, please.
Angela Moore.
Angela Moore.
I really understand the intent of this ordinance, that your desire is to protect the property rights of people who are adjacent to people who are grading their lands. This is no small issue, and I know that this could be disastrous for someone uphill of them digging on a property line and causing landslide or erosion into their property. but I am concerned about some of the wording. Not to beat a dead horse, but the use of the word may in land disturbing activity, it creates fear, especially people who've had less than positive run-ins with the government before, or like many of the citizens here who have a tendency to have a general distrust. I think that finding a way to reword that would probably go a long way to making people more comfortable with this. Like I said, I know that that's not anything new, but it may serve the public well. The other big wording thing that I would really like to see you guys address that I haven't heard anyone mention is well, excuse me. Obviously, there's the affidavit. I'm very much against that. The idea that you would have to sign something like that is deplorable in my opinion. But it's not just that. I've heard all of you repeatedly say that if you're not engaging in land disturbing activities, you don't need to come in and do the license, which means if you're not causing sedimentation. But there is another reason that you would need the license. If you are grading. The term grading is used under exceptions. This section shall not apply to anyone who is actually performing the grading or land disturbing activities on property they personally own and do not sell or offer sale or transfer to another party for a period of 1 year after completion. The term grading is not defined, so we would have to rely on a general definition of grading. Now, something we see around here all the time, especially people with farm equipment, is they stick the grader on their tractor and they grade their driveway or their mother's driveway or their neighbor's driveway, or, you know, maybe that humpy spot in somebody's front yard that's relatively flat. It's not land disturbing activity, but it definitely, under this definition, it requires a license. My husband and I are in this exact situation. We have a yard that's had several tree stumps removed. In fact, we rented the equipment and did it ourselves. We've seriously considered renting a grader so that our children don't turn their ankles running over the hummocky land. While this most certainly wouldn't be land disturbing activity, it would be grading. So I would ask you to consider removing that term or defining it in a way so that it would not encompass everyone. My preference would be that you not require private citizens to get this kind of licensing at all, although I do understand that it creates a more difficult enforcement for our building department. But it's actually something I'd like you to consider asking them to bear that burden. Not because the work is easy or because they should have to do it, but simply because the cost of not bearing that burden is taking away our private property rights. So I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing what you do.
Thank you, Angela.
Chairman, in regard to one of Ms. Moore's comments about the term grading, that is one of the technical changes that I would be recommending to this one, is to take that term out altogether.
Thank you, Chester. Anyone else? Any questions from the board?
Mr. Bird, if you're ready. Time to go to bed.
Chester, would it be appropriate for me to close the public comment
I think
section
it's
of this and give us the opportunity to
most
discuss?
important to make sure one last time, if anybody else has a desire to speak, whether they were on the list, signed up or not.
Anyone else would like to speak? Going once, going twice, sold. All right. I'd also like to, Mike, put into the record, I've received, I'll read the names, 9 emails for the proposed change. Kathy Stillwell, William McClarney, Nancy Scott, Chris Hanners, Susan Irvin, Mr. and Miss Polanski, Gene Honeycutt, and Bill Crawford. And I received one email from David Culpepper against it. So if we can place those in the record, that'd be great.
Thank you all for coming and voicing your opinions.
We're still going to discuss it some more, so. I'm going to close the public comment session just to give us, we're still going to discuss if you want to hang out and listen, so.
No, it's not about the ordinance.
Okay.
I signed another paper about it.
Yeah, it'll come up after we get close to this. Thank you, Dave. I'll go ahead and start and lead this off with things that I heard tonight that made me open my mind a little bit about this potential change, and it's going to give me something to ponder until we can potentially discuss this again. Is a size limit required? I don't think that there's any of us in here. Well, let me rephrase that. I think we all can potentially understand the intent if you get an out-of-hand neighbor with a bulldozer, how it might adversely affect you. So I think there's a purpose and intent for what the planning board and potentially this board was trying to do. But is there a reason? Maybe it might cure some of the clarification issues, which there seem to be a whole lot of miscommunication, misunderstanding of how you interpret certain words within this ordinance. So is it a size limit? Is it a quarter acre? Is it an eighth of an acre? Is it an acre? Maybe there's a size limit on it. I also wrote down the word vague because there seems to be a lot of confusion in the room tonight of what actually you can do, what you can't do, and even David was looking at me earlier. I couldn't answer him. I don't know. I'm still learning too. I'm up here trying to understand and trying to make good decisions from the county based upon all the information that I can gather. I think that's part of being a good public servant. I wrote down the word confusion. Again, there seem to be some confused looks in here, including myself. And then I wrote down the idea, the term that I picked up too, which is education. I think that's part of the intent of what's trying to get across here, is trying to keep people from doing something wrong. Now, is it the right way? Is it the wrong way? I'm still pondering that. I'm still thinking about it. But I think education is a good thing for everybody, especially on this topic where it can adversely affect potentially our streams, our waterways, and our neighbors. But I will be pondering those, and I'll welcome any of the other commissioners to provide their thoughts as well.
There were some very good points brought up. I think Ms. Wallace brought some very good points as it being Lassiter. And why is it there in the first place? That's what you got to remember. Why was it implemented in the first place? And it was like Ms. Moore said, it was to prevent that neighbor from turning the water down on you. We still have those problems today. Jack can attest to that. You know, and I think the man mentioned if he had a slide in his driveway. But you keep forgetting the second part of that ordinance. Is he going to endanger the water? We're trying to protect the water stream and to protect the neighbor, your adjoining neighbor. That's the whole idea behind the whole thing. And that was the intent of it when it started. It's still the intent today, I believe, Mr. Manager, unless I'm reading it wrong again. That's still the whole intent of the whole thing, is protect your neighbor. And if you're moving tree stumps out, and if you're on Otter Creek and you're moving tree stumps, but I really, and I voiced this before on the affidavit signing, I think that's something this board really needs to think about. Because I think there were some good points made on that. And if, we're trying to prevent it before it happens, because now it's got so expensive and there's cases to be documented. If you do let the water, if you do work on your property and it gets on somebody else's property, it is a major deal. We've been down that road too. So, but there's some good points made, Mr. Chairman, and it's reason we have a public hearing.
I agree. Good discussion tonight. Gary?
I think there's a number of things that maybe perk up a little bit. It's that a lot of times you have access to another county, and those people then have to have the qualifications for here. And I think that's a red flag for me. Whether you're going to Rabun, you're going to Swain County, or Murphy, or anything. Anybody that's coming from another county, let's just say Andrews, coming to Tananahala to do some work, they're out of the county. So that's something that I'm thinking about. How do you correct that? Also, the death part. The gentleman that brought that up. That's something that I've read this a number of times. That needs to be looked at. Going back and talk about the emergency situation on your property. If you have an emergency, road goes into the creek or whatever it may be, how do you respond? How are you able to respond with that legally without being in a situation of where you're fined. And I still think the reason we initiate fines is not money for the county. It's supposed to be a deterrent. You'll do things right because I don't want to pay a fine. It doesn't help the coffers, I don't think so, of the county that much. But maybe that's not a deterrent. The write-up isn't clear. And I've discussed this with my colleagues up here. And I didn't know if I'm just dense or sometimes I struggle trying to wrap my arms around what something means. And you got legal terms in here that you just have to understand, like grading. And I put that in my notes here. That then also the word affidavit that came up. These are things that you pointed out tonight that allows us to understand this a little bit more. And I want to say thank you for giving us that opportunity, and that's what it's all about.
Thank you, Commissioner Shields.
Oh, no, I just, we do become, with it, if this is adopted, we are an occupational licensing authority. There's 57 of them in North Carolina already. You need a license to do about everything, and it's proven that licensing limits entrepreneurship. And if this license meant anything, I possess a couple of state licenses, and I didn't take an open book test to get any of them. I have to show that I'm financially able to take care of mistakes that I make. The licensing board has a recovery fund, so when you become an occupational licensing body, it's a pretty big thing. The bad thing about this license, it is of no value to anyone. I've heard it said that some people want to be recognized as having a license. If those people want to recognize that, go to Raleigh and get your license. Get a license that's recognized throughout the state, not some little piece of paper that says, I've taken an open book test and I know how to put up a silt fence. That's of zero value to anybody. And I'm in the business. I've been in it. I watched the initial program when it was up. It was it was never an adequate program. I've seen people go out and ruin land, and I've been on site, and all they had to do was come and get a license. Come out of the code enforcement office and pick up your license. Pay your $25, whatever. It didn't work for 5, 10, 15 years. Why is it? And Macon County didn't fall off the map. The creeks are not full of mud. So where's the credence to say that we need this now and it's going to save Macon County in the future? And I'm a property owner in Macon County. I'm blessed to be a property owner, as most of you are blessed to be property owners in Macon County. It's the biggest investment we'll make in our lifetime. I'm not going to do anything that will damage or degrade the value or the beauty of my property. And by saying that, I trust in the knowledge of the individual property owner that he's going to protect his property. You cannot, now you'll always have an ignorant person out there that's going to do something, yes, that damages his neighbor. You can't legislate immorality or morality or ignorance. If we had 10 of these programs in place, it's not going to keep those fluke things from happening. In the body of the erosion control ordinance, there's already a penalty. There's already a program to handle severe cases of sedimentation. It's $5,000 a day, depending on what the administrator. He can fine you up to $5,000 every day that violation occurs. So why would we want to go from $5,000 to $500 a day? If you read the erosion control ordinance, there are provisions in this local ordinance. There's provisions in state ordinances. The Corps of Engineers, there's many people, regulatory agencies that regulate our water. And we as Macon County landowners, I think, love our waters and our streams more than anybody else. And I'll place my faith in those individual landowners any day before I'll place it into a document that is vaguely written and just seems to me to exert a little more control, governmental control, over what I can do as a conscientious landowner.
First off, I'd like to recognize Jack and the planning board for the work that's been done to this. I think probably being on the planning board, and Ronnie's been around forever, he'll attest to this, you gotta be pretty thick-skinned because you're asked to work on things. They're presented to the county commissioners, and sometimes they sit on, sometimes they act on, and a lot of times you get shot full of holes despite your best efforts. So thank you to everyone involved. Secondly, thank you to everyone who come out tonight and gave comment. It is absolutely imperative that when this body is considering anything that affects the citizens of Macon County, we gotta have citizen input. I would encourage you to come to the planning board meeting when these issues are discussed. Those meetings are open, and believe me, I've been to enough of them. And nobody was there. I'd be tickled if somebody shows up and talk to us. So I just encourage everyone to come out and give your input. Your input is crucial in our end product, okay? And while I'm tickled you're here tonight and we're getting at this point, I would love to see it early on. I would love to see this type of input when we're discussing any type of issues early on, and help mold that and help make it into something that represents our community as a whole. So, and the best way for that to happen is, get on board early. And I can't say that enough, so I'll hush about it. There's been a lot of great points brought up tonight. I think a lot of those points, we could sit down one-on-one and go through and address those points and add clarity to them. I think there's some of those points that deserve some clarity in the form of language in this thing. There may be some things that need to come out. That's what we're going to have to determine. But I think we've got something to work with. We've got some great input that we can incorporate into that, and we can have something we can all put our arms around and be pleased with, whether it's there or not. We'll all have input into it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Derek?
No, just, again, thank everybody for coming. That's going through the process. A lot of times, policies like making sausage. It's ugly when it's going on, but it comes out sausage. And this is a very crucial part of that process. It's ugly and it don't look like sausage when you're doing it, but it eventually looks like sausage, which is what I think Carl's saying. Again, very valuable part of this process, of the public policy process. And this is what it's all about. Government's never operates better until it's operating alongside the citizens. And so
Took
just
away from the contractors and put it back on to the public, to the landowners. That's where it got turned around.
Good deal.
And the landowner, he can't do nothing on his property. That's where it stops. He's paying his taxes, he's doing it all.
All right. I want to thank everyone for coming again. If y'all would like to slip out, please feel free. I would like to have one more statement, just a bone of contention with a couple of remarks that were said tonight that I had. I've been a commissioner now, I believe, for 6 years. Anyone out here venture to guess how many new ordinances this board has passed? How many new rules and regulations? I heard that we keep passing them. How many have we passed since I've been a board member? One. We passed one. We made our recreation parks tobacco-free. That's the only one this board's made, but they have reduced a few, so just wanted to bring that up. All right, y'all are welcome to hang out with us. We're going to be discussing a lot more county business, or feel free to slip out. I'll give y'all, those that are leaving, a few minutes before we start back. Would y'all like to take a recess real quick?
You need to declare the public hearing closed.
Public hearing is closed. Thank you, Chester. Yeah. Okay.
She's got to drive back to Hickory tonight.
You gotta
gentleman from Ray Gills, Paul, he's got the type A advance, so he's about this. Now, he's a
Flu
sick
shot
boy.
was a flu, but
He didn't have a flu shot, I don't know. I had mine and I was with him all day, Thursday and Friday. But he's a sick boy.
they say it, Virginia's sick too.
52, Virginia City get tested. 52,
Thank you, Jack.
52 died in North California.
Oh, really?
Comment period. Mr. Jacobs, welcome back. He's going to speak to recycling centers and buildings.
We'll get Chris's here, ain't you?
I don't hardly know how to start, but I would like, since I've been here the last time, has any of you been to Nantahala? To address any of the things that I mentioned the last time, the recycling center, the community building?
Chris and I have talked about
You're Chris?
recycling.
Good to meet you, Chris.
You too, sir. Yeah, we had a conversation.
Come on up here.
You gentlemen today, did anybody haul the garbage off today in Franklin? In Franklin? No, not Franklin. Anybody in Franklin? Did you get your shoes muddy? Why? Did you haul any off today?
Yeah.
Did you get shoes muddy?
Absolutely.
Did you get yours muddy?
Real money.
That's one of my, I'm not belittling you guys anyway, but we got problems in Nantahala. And it doesn't seem like that anybody much cares.
You want to talk about you on Commissioner Hickman's conversation, or?
I will say first of all that I wish all our centers were paved, if for the phone calls and nothing else. But in fact, we have 11 centers. 5 of them are paved, 6 of them are not. So Nantahala is not getting picked on. Neither is Scaly, because we have those 3 and 3 closer to town that are not paved. One of the 5 that are paved was sort of a private deal that happened some time ago. We have plans, we have drawings, there are things we would like to do at all the centers. I wanted to do for years. It's just a matter of capital outlay and prioritizing, and we've just gone through the landfill expansion and development of the new cell, and that has sort of boogered the process of other capital expenditures for probably the last 5 or 6 years of preparation. It's not an excuse, it's just a reason.
But it seems to me like the people in Nantahala that tells me how you're wasting your time and you're wasting your breath by coming over here. And I'm keep hoping that before these 5 new faces on that wall up there, that the people in Nantahala will say, those guys done us a jam up job. But our community building is, like I said, it's a double wide trailer, it's still leaking. We need to be upgraded. And it just don't seem like anybody really cares. We don't have anybody over here that seems like it's on our side. We appreciate the place that we've got to throw our garbage away, but we're stepping out in mud. And you want to talk about erosion control, you ought to see it over right now. We need erosion control around that for all the mud.
Mr. Ship?
No kidding.
Mr. Ship, you know about hauling stone, don't you? You know about gravel?
Yes.
How many tons of stone you think it'd take to fix that mud hole over there?
Oh, probably 30 ton. Clean stone would clean it up probably.
Which side are you
The whole loop. Oh, that's
School
great.
side or Juma
Both of them. Both of them.
School.
Just so
Couple good loads.
But that's a Band-Aid.
Probably 2 loads.
We don't want a Band-Aid's fine, but we don't want a Band-Aid. We want it, we'd like to see it paid. I know gravel's a good effort, but guys, it's a mud hole. Now, Mr. Ronnie told me one time it was too soft. Well, if it's too soft, we can dig it out and put stone in and pave over top of it.
I don't know how many ton of gravel has been put over there, over the years, I don't know, but.
It seems to be bottomless.
I mean, that could be fixed though. Go in there and grade it out, put matting down, put stone down, and pave it, and you never have to worry about putting gravel on it again.
Well, there are a couple of issues at our sites in Highlands, is that we don't own. And one or both of them, one of them is owned by the Nantahala, and one is owned by Duke Energy. Am I correct in that?
Right.
So, some years ago, I sought to make significant changes at Junaluska, but Duke Energy was going through their process, and for some reason, I don't remember the history, they weren't that happy with us at the time, and so they would not allow me to do anything at that site. Over the past year, I have sort of reached back out to them. I would like to make that a one-way center by adding an exit on that little side road. Don't know the name of it, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Sail River Road.
The one to go, yeah, that's it. And after a year of talking, Duke, the Forest Service, DOT, nobody claims ownership of that road, so nobody can tell me that I can have access to it. So it's not that we're not thinking about you. It's just there are hurdles to the changes that need to be made at the Highlands Road Center. And probably the center that's in the best shape and the newer one is Otto, and I can't stand that because I don't like the layout. So I mean, you're not the Lone Rangers on having problems with your centers. I think the centers are the face of the county. There's no other facility that everybody in this county walks through, drives through on a weekly basis like our centers. Man, I wish they were better, but we are where we are with them, and there's a number, like I said, there's not one single reason or one single center that is ignored or far as being receptive and hearing you, I got a couple of calls, and with apologies, when I ask, are all my centers open, and I hear yes, I just assume that means yes. I found out that day from some calls from you guys that, the school site was not open, and I think about 2 hours later, I had my guy over there, de-icing the center so that it could open the next day. So that's probably not that bad a turnaround. And I will say that the school site center is the only center that we did anything to try to make it ready to get customers back. By and large, we count on God and Mother Nature to take care of that for us. In 17 years, there's probably been less than 10 days of interruption of service due to weather. And I think the good folks that pay my landfill fee would not want me investing in $250,000 worth of equipment to service these centers and then rust down because they were needed 4 times in 17 years. So we sort of let nature, we sort of let neighbors that have contacts with DOT or know somebody with a scraper, we kind of muddle through together.
But if you asphalt that one at below the schoolhouse, put up all different, good railing and all there, you wouldn't have to worry about that other than having somebody clean it off. Would that not be cheaper in the long run?
Well,
I mean, a load of gravel's $400 and.
I mean, absolutely, it would be cheaper, but just because it's cheaper in the long run doesn't mean that I have capital dollars versus I have operational dollars. I mean, that's just a fact of local government life. I may have $2,000 to spend on gravel this year at that center. I don't have $30,000 or $50,000.
Who allocate your dollars?
The gentleman to your right.
Gentlemen, we at Nantahala need some asphalt. I mean, if you guys come over there in fancy
Do
black
we own that
shoes,
side?
they had been awful muddy today.
We don't own either of those sites.
So we don't own the county don't own either one of those places.
Well, don't you think the county ought to come up, get on the planning board, get somebody over there to find some land? I mean, is it up to we pay you guys for that. Do we not?
Yeah.
Huh? Help us out. We just need to be helped out.
Could I make one comment? Before we get into this thing too much, there's a real bad safety issue with that coming out of that exit on that thing. You cannot come out of it without crossing the yellow line, getting on the other lane. I think that ought to be looked at to where you can come out of there and not have to go across that yellow line. I've nearly got run over 2 or 3 times right there.
And again, your school site. These centers were put in the 70s when we stopped doing green boxes and started maintaining because we had to control what was going in the landfills. And, I don't know how they came up with it. I don't know what kind of process went into it. I think it was where's a 1/4 acre land that we can nest on for free or cheap. And, as the population has grown, we have not kept up. And there's no doubt you're right. There needs to be a reckoning at many of our centers, and that is something that the manager and I have talked about, and in some of his, as he's trying to develop some capital improvement planning instead of reacting, and hopefully you'll see the fruits of it. Hopefully I'll see the fruits of it.
Mr. Jacobs, we hear you loud and clear. As part of our meeting tonight under new business, we're going to be scheduling a mid-year review. And we're going to be starting our budget kickoff for next year, so we will definitely take it under advisement and see if we can't work something into our budget moving up into next year. So,
The community building too? Finding
be
some
happy
property
to,
for that?
so.
Yeah, community building's gonna be on the capital improvement plan, a walking trail around the ball field out there, that was the thing, and then the dump stations were the 3 things that I think everybody's concerned about. Library and community building. And, we'll be discussing the broadband issue for it. Initially, we were looking for property, had to have somewhere where we get that high-speed internet or whatever, but now I'm talking to Warren Cape, why not just put up a dish and buy a piece of property somewhere and do the community building and library together? So But it will be in the capital improvement plan, absolutely. I guarantee you that. And we're supposed to have that next month.
We'll be discussing that at our budget kickoff that we'll be discussing later on the agenda. That'll be the first time it's introduced to the board. And like Commissioner Higdon said, that plan is an opportunity for us to look at the capital needs for the next 10 years in this county and prioritize those needs in a way that will allow us to accomplish them best while not going broke doing so. Just to how we can get these projects, space them over time, and also we're going to be discussing ways to fund them as well. So all these will get put in the hopper. They'll go through the discussion process with the Board of Commissioners, and we'll have a plan come out of that.
So
And Nantahala has gotten we all talked about this, Nantahala's been kind of red-edged stepchild. But what you said there earlier, I wish some of you guys, we do need a representative on the planning board or some of these committees from Nantahala. Absolutely. I'd love to see one of you guys on the planning board. I'd like to see somebody from Scaling Mountain on it, but this seems like we kind of cluster it right around locally, but
well, I just want to be able to tell the people that I'm around that they say how you're wasting your breath, and I don't want to have to say that anymore.
no.
I want to feel like that y'all care about what's going on over there.
Now, the landfill is a separate, it's a separate child. It's got its own, what do you call it?
Enterprise fund.
It's an enterprise system. The money that's paid on your property to fund the landfill, that's a separate account from our general fund that we manage here. That's separate enterprise fund. Everything that's handled through solid waste goes through that enterprise fund, which Chris manages. So any improvements that are made to that, to those centers or anything in the landfill, comes out of the money that you all pay every month or every year, $96 a year for your landfill fees. That's where that money goes. And you guys have been getting the short end of the stick on that. I think it's absolutely imperative we get some gravel over there to get you out of the mud to start with while we're talking about it. I mean, that's pretty simple to me. But with this freeze and thaw, it's going to be a nightmare.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
So I think it's imperative that somehow we come up with enough money to get a few loads of gravel down there. So right now.
And I budget for that. It's probably a little earlier than we like to put it down, because if we put it down in January, it's gone by March. So again, we kind of suffer and muddle through so that when we do put it down, it's at least there through the summer. Just decisions that you haven't made.
Well, I talk to different people, and they come through Carson community and out yonder on the 28th. They'll say, "Wow, why can't we have that in Nantahala?"
You don't want Carson over there. Carson's a nightmare.
But it is
Get your
paid.
shoes wet.
It is paid, but it's a nightmare.
I'm gonna move us on. We've got a lot of
Thank you
business
very
tonight.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Jacobs. Jennifer Hayes. Welcome, Jennifer.
Evening, gentlemen. Shields. I would also like to address the recycling centers, but for a different approach. I spoke at the town council meeting to raise awareness, so here tonight I'm ready for solutions. Every major holiday afterwards when they're closed, because everyone deserves a chance to spend the holidays with their families, our citizens, our fellow citizens, take it upon themselves to leave their trash at the locked gates, and that's littering. And there's supposed to be something done about that, besides the fact that our solid waste managers and our solid waste attendants have to muddle through that. There's, feces, bacteria, needles. You don't know what people have. And this time of year, everything is frozen to the ground, and the animals have scattered it all over the place. On 28, there's 2 vantage points for this trash to make its way into the river, so that's also something that we're looking at conserving. I brought it up, the mayor even said that he's seen it, and my father has worked for the solid waste for 14 years, and it happens every single year. And I speak for myself, not for him. And I've posted it on Macon Issues, it's a Facebook page. A lot of your citizens feel the same way that I feel, that something needs to be done. There's hundreds of bags of trash just left there. For my sister and my father, used a trailer to move it off of the locked gate at one point. They couldn't even get in there. And it's on us. It's our community that's doing it to each other. But where do we enforce it? Are there cameras? Are we violating somebody's privacy for not putting up cameras or for putting up cameras? People were saying, let's put, a lone dumpster out front. Well, then what's the point of having a gate?
Chris, thoughts?
I hate people that leave stuff at the gate. I hate it with a passion. We have looked, and we actually have, we deployed one for an alternate purpose, but we've gotten a couple of cameras that we haven't deployed at the centers yet. As a trial run, these cameras are very expensive. The problem we have is not just having a camera and capturing somebody. How do you power this camera? How do you get a feed from this camera to somewhere? As y'all may or may not know, we were broken into up in Highlands at the transfer station a couple months ago, and the people were savvy enough to steal the DVR and cause some kind of virus to the little SD cards. There's just so much cameras can do, and just again I go back to just kind of trying to be a store and trying to balance. The camera. The best solution I've found so far is these cameras we're gonna try. Just under $7,000 a piece. Why should I spend $100,000 because some, I don't want to say assholes, but some irresponsible citizens, why do I need to spend the good people's money because irresponsible citizens do this kind of thing?
Are there signs, I'm asking, so are there signs out that say don't do this?
Well, I mean,
Yes,
I think everybody
there are.
is littering. I will share a funny anecdote. Several years ago, I made a request of the sheriff's department that during holidays, if they had people that weren't on a call, if they could kind of hang out near the centers. On Thanksgiving of whatever year that was, about 3 o'clock, I got a call from Sheriff Robert Holland at my dinner table. And Sheriff Holland relayed to me, you remember?
Yeah.
I'm tired of being cussed, I'm going home.
Because I was working and you were home eating.
I mean, we had
Mark Hayes, my father.
Mark Hayes, my maintenance guy. He was out trying to pick this stuff up, and there are people pulling in and throwing bags out on the ground as they're loading them in there.
Every single person that day that I stopped and made them put the garbage back in their vehicle were people that do not live in Macon County. They stayed here overnight, or they were here visiting. They were leaving the county, and on their way out, they had to take the trash out of the rental cabin or wherever they were.
Yes, sir. That was brought up in that Facebook page about what do we do about visitors, and it's simple. Just enforce
It's a
what's going
misdemeanor. They
on.
won't extradite back to North Carolina. They're scot-free.
And I mean,
And
that's
there's
kind of
proper
one of
planning
our
as well.
hurdles. I mean, this is why we're open on Sunday, is because of the weekenders.
And the lack of their logistics is not our fault or our problem.
I think it's a burden to somehow be borne by the renters of these properties. But we don't have, there's nothing in our ordinance at this time that would require a rental home to offer their customers disposal. They generally just leave a note on where the center's at. And center's open or closed, doesn't so much matter if you're on your way back.
So the solution is to just, like most problems we face up here, throw money at it and stay open on those holidays.
I mean, first of all, the county recognizes 12 holidays. The only two that we officially recognize are Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day. Now, there are two others, New Year's and the 4th of July, which sometimes don't fall on a Monday or Friday. If those two don't fall on a Monday or Friday, we will close. If it's on a Monday or Friday, it's just too difficult to keep situation up and running. So we're closed either 2 days a year or 4 days a year max. Now, the first was a Monday, we were set to be open, but with the ice, and the county offices being closed, I just decided, let's just, it's a holiday, we'll just leave it at that and be closed that day. That's a fairly unique situation. Had it not been for the weather, we would have been open. But that ignores the real problem of the fact that people just don't care. People will just throw it. I mean, that's like, why don't we do more with littering? Well, we can write all the laws. We can triple the sheriff's staff. I didn't say that out loud. We can do whatever we want to. If somebody wants to chunk something out the window, they're going to chunk something out the window. Paul, I think you said earlier, you can't regulate morality. If somebody doesn't mind crapping up their neighborhood, man, what are we going to do?
So is the trash that gets piled up, is that because the center's closed?
Yeah.
Anytime the center is closed, you can see it happen.
Not necessarily on these holidays.
I mean, holidays,
Mainly the holidays, because
that's the only days we're ever closed.
Seems like a holiday's a simple fix. On a holiday, you just sit a dumpster outside.
They have qualifications for OSHA standards for distribution of how they handle and dispose of the materials that come in. So you can't just throw a refrigerator and oils into the same pan or into the same dumpster.
I mean, our centers are staffed and manned, and our
Right.
attendants are trained because there are a number of
Have it
items
all in
that
one
can't go in
dumpster
those
so you
things.
don't have it piled outside.
Except in
and
Navajo.
go through it. I mean, it seems like that. I know that's a second step that they have to go
We
through.
think of lesser evils, but it's all on monetary value of the lesser evil. Because to me, the greater evil is the fact that the attendants still have to do extra going through there and sorting it out when their whole purpose of their job is to stand there and make sure things are being sorted properly. So on 4 days, we're going to penalize them for doing their job and you got your day off. That's not fair. I think that if there's a convenience store that's closed and I go up to it and I think it should be open, I can't just barge in there. And you said it's the face of the county. If you spray paint on somebody's business wall, that's defacing public property. And I feel that's exactly the same thing that we're doing to our centers. You're defacing them. And everyone goes through there. Everyone sees them. The mayor said so himself. He sees it every year.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for those folks who cleaned it up too, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Ashley?
Jennifer, I will say one other thing, and I told you guys this is about 6 months ago. In my time here, we've had 3 needle sticks. 2 of those were from trash left at the gate overnight.
Scary.
We'll ask Chris to come up with a solution to the next meeting. Is that right?
No problem.
Ashley?
I'm also discussing the same thing as Jen. I actually have volunteered several times. My dad is a Marquez, and I have volunteered several times to help him pick up all this trash. And it's not just a pile of it. It's like 80 to 150 bags of trash. And we don't have any solutions. Everyone's asked us, what are you coming with? What are you going to propose? I don't have anything to propose. I'm only proposing awareness. I mean, I wanted to bring it to you guys, and maybe you guys have ideas, or you have things that maybe you can put in place, or enforcement somehow. Does the solid waste, do they have an officer dedicated to that program?
We have an enforcement officer. He is not a sworn officer.
So what does he do?
In general, or with regards to these centers?
Both.
Well, in general, we take.
Okay. So in regards to these centers, because this is an enforcement
If
issue.
you happen to find one, like over the holiday, every time he's coming to town, he pulls in, he stops, he runs people off, he gets cussed, and he goes down the road. He'll usually encourage people to pick up everything, not just theirs. Some of you may know our enforcement is not really developed towards littering. That's a.
This just
that's
happens to be a
police-
byproduct of
that's
the issue.
a law enforcement issue. Ours is geared more towards illegal dumping.
This is
Our
illegal
rules-
dumping.
But our rules our rules are built towards like illegal landfill dumping. For instance, if I were to try to cite you, you have 15 days to correct. Well, I gotta get that stuff moved by 7 o'clock. So it's not gonna be there 15 days from now. So that's just not how our enforcement is developed.
Okay, well, I really don't have much more to say on it because Jennifer kind of covered it all. I mean, we've discussed it. All this is all, like she said, you can see in Macon issues. I personally was a little ignorant of the fact that it was such a huge issue until I started helping my dad.
And if it's any consolation, the other counties fight the same thing.
That's,
Which said
I don't. It isn't. I don't live in those counties.
all of them.
I'm sorry. This is
all
our
of them.
county, and we take pride in our county. And all these issues everyone's talked about tonight is our county.
That's right. That's right.
And I am very passionate about it. I have learned about it, and maybe a big word tonight was education. Maybe if we put out some more notices, or if we, especially on the weekends, run some ads in the paper about where you can take your trash and to be sure that these times are closed on these dates. I did hear something about how there's not enough notice for closure. Like people, they don't know that it is, or that it's supposed to be open and it isn't, or they could leave 15 minutes early, things such as that. So maybe we can get the word out to the public a little bit better than how we are.
Good point.
I just want to thank you guys for
All
all
right,
that you
thank you,
do.
Ashley.
I know you guys work hard, and it was a little heated in here, so thank you.
We got a long night to go if you want to
Thank
hang
you
out.
for helping pick it up.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
We missed?
Good job, girls.
All right, we're gonna move on to adjustments to and approval of the agenda. Any changes, Mr. Manager?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. If we could add a item to old business, it'd be item number 10C. It'd be a resolution exempting the surveying services for the South Macon expansion. If we could also add another item under old business, it'd be item number 10D, extension of the lease agreement on the current burn building property.
Anyone else? Need a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
A motion and a second, all in favor? Reports and presentations, finally. Audit presentation for fiscal year 2017, Mr. Matt Braswell. Welcome, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Enjoy small town politics.
You going to bulldozer,
This is
Matt?
not the first one, it won't be the last one. It's I completely understand, and I've been doing this for 10 years,
Yeah.
so it's nothing new to me on that one. But I appreciate you letting me take a little bit of time. I'll try to be short and sweet. I know you got a lot of stuff going on, but I'll just kind of go over mainly your general fund, then we'll touch base on your landfill fund, your enterprise fund there, and just kind of give you a snapshot in time, 6/30/17, what's your fund balance and what your what kind of happened throughout the year, and where you came in, fund balance, general fund, revenue, expenditure wise there. So let me get this started here. And does this work here?
Oh, he asked me about that.
Oops. Okay, I'll just use it up here. I'm sorry. All right. Let's go. Okay, audit highlights, unmodified opinion. That means that we issued a clean opinion, which means your financial statements are materially correct in accordance with GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. And so a clean opinion or unmodified opinion is the best you can receive for your audit report or for your financials. Very cooperative staff. Lori Hall, she takes tremendous pride and time in making sure that your audit is completed in a timely fashion and able to get us everything that we need. Very, very responsive in emails, phone calls, field work, and everything like that. So she was very appreciated this year, and I just anybody that we worked with in the county, DSS, from finance to payroll, everyone was very easy to work with, and especially want to thank Lori Hall as well.
Thank you,
right, next slide. Total fund balance in your general fund. You can see the comparatives for the 3 years here. So you've had a gradual increase from 15, 16 to 17. So in total, your general fund balance went to about 26 million and 200,000 there, up about $770,000 from 16 to 17. And this is after all other financing sources, revenues, and expenses. And so overall, total general fund balance increased about 700,000. And then just to kind of give you a little bit of a definition here on fund balance, which I'm sure that you've heard this or seen this, excuse me. Your fund balance serves as your financial resources available as a measure. And so to calculate that, you have your assets plus your deferred outflows, which is different deferred pension related type items, various other deferred outflows. It would be like deferred charges on refunding, different things like that. Minus your liabilities, which is things that you owe. Your deferred inflows of resources, this would be, for example, your property tax receivables, different things like that, comes up with your fund balance is everything that is left over there. Or your assets plus deferred outflows minus your liabilities minus your deferred inflows equals your fund balance. And the different classifications, just to kind of touch base on that, you have non-spendable, which is not in cash form, which is your inventory and your prepaids. And then you have restricted, which is outside external restrictions or third parties such as like USDA, different things like that, different strings attached to that. And then you're committed, that is internal constraints by you, the board, that you put on various dollars. And so then assigned is the lowest level of commitment. It is less than committed. And then unassigned is everything that's left over. And so you had an unassigned fund balance of about 21.8 million in your general fund. Available fund balance. This is what the local government commission will look at when they look at your financial statements, when they review your financial statements, to give them kind of what are your resources on hand. And so your available fund balance is calculated as your total fund balance less your non-spendables, which is inventory and prepaids, less your stabilization by state statute, which is accounts receivable or money that you have not received in yet that is not available for appropriation. So you have to take that out and comes up with your available fund balance. And then this is your available fund balance calculation in your general fund. You can see your total fund balance came in at 26.2, less your non-spendable and stabilization by state statute, comes up with your available fund balance of 22.2 million there. So you had an increase of about $300,000 in your available fund balance. So a small increase there from 2016. And then this available fund balance as a percentage of expenditures and transfers out, this shows how much reserves you have on hand. And so you had a decrease there of about 4%, and you had an increase in available fund balance, but a decrease in your available percentage. And the reason is that your expenditures that are divided into that available fund balance increased more than what your available fund balance went up. So overall, you had a small decrease in your available fund balance as a percentage of expenditures, but you did have an increase in available fund balance. So that's kind of how that was. You had an increase there, but a small decrease here. So, and just to kind of put that in perspective, your expenditures and transfers out for 2017 was $50 million, and in 2016 it was 45.3. So that'll kind of show you why the small decrease there. But what we like to show here and explain is that 8% is roughly 1 month expenditures on hand or supply reserves. So you have about 5.5 months of supply on hand there. So that is overall, that's good. So that means you could operate the government on basically just fund balance for 5.5 months. And then general fund summary here, this will show you comparatives of 2016 to 2017. You can see that you had increases in revenues and expenditures in 2017. Revenues went up about 4%, expenditures went up about 5%. And the main increases in your revenues were property tax increased slightly, sales tax was up quite substantially, so that is good. We've seen that across the state as well. And then your restricted intergovernmental, which is your federal and your state grants, increased as well. Then expenditures went up about 5%. And the largest functions there was general government and public safety. And we'll go into a little bit more detail in the next slides here. This is kind of just to show a breakdown of your top 3 revenue sources. So top 3 revenues comprise about 90% of your total revenues in the general fund. Ad valorem taxes, this is going to be your largest one for any municipality or local government or county of that. And then your restricted and governmental came in at 19%, ad valorem taxes 56%, and sales tax accounted for 15%. So overall, that's your top 3 revenue sources, and this is very, very comparable to the prior year as well.
This information that you're providing for us right now, do we have a copy of this?
I can email it to you tomorrow.
Okay, it's good information, and I'm flipping here through this book,
Yes, sir.
and I don't think it's in here.
No, it is in there, but it's not like in this form.
Right, I understand.
We're just going big picture here. One thing in your audit report there that I was gonna say at the end is that it's a fairly large document. If you don't have time to go through the entire document, I would look at the management discussion and analysis, which is prepared by management, that kind of goes over all the highlights, increases, decreases, and even gives you some 2018, that's the compliance letters. So it would actually be in the other book, it'll be almost right after that. Yep, you're almost there. It's right before that. It's right before that. No, you're right there.
Right here.
Now go back a few pages. It'll go right after that. Right there's this one right here.
Right here.
That
starts on page 12.
Management discussion analysis. It'll give you causes for increases, decreases. It's kind of the big picture, how things happen, what caused it, and kind of doesn't go into, because financial statements are overall, they're getting more and more complex and harder to read because of all the GASB statements and pronouncements and all that stuff. But the management discussion analysis, that pretty much gives you the nitty gritty, the skinny that I like to say on, what happened for the year. Top 3 revenue sources, ad valorem taxes increased to about 28.3, or slight increase of 1%. So overall, fairly comparable there. Restricted and governmental, this is your federal and your state grants, had an increase of about 9%, or $840,000, and just an increase in your federal grants that you got for the year. And these fluctuate from year to year, so next year it may be a small increase. It's just kind of timing differences there. And you did have a few new grants this year that kind of caused some of that increase, but overall it's going to fluctuate some from year to year. Came in at about 9.8 million. Local option sales tax came in at close to 7.5. Had an increase there of about $600,000, or 9%. So overall, that is very good.
This is through when?
6/30/17. This is a snapshot in time, the annual financial statements.
So we're still lacking everything from July on.
This was a full 12 months. This is July to
July, 16 to 17.
30 to 17, yeah.
For the entire, yes.
It's a
Fiscal
complete
year.
Fiscal year, right.
Yes, sir. Top 3 expenditures, public safety, human services, and education accounted for roughly 73% of your total expenditures there. Total top 3 was about 33.2 million. So total expenditures came in at roughly 45 million. But overall, we just kind of want to show you what your largest expenditure functions are, and like the revenues, these are very, very comparable to the prior year as well. Public safety expenditures, we had an increase of about $1 million, or 10%. Main causes increases for that was the jail had an increase in housing, different various expenditures there, inmate population increase, and then EMS also had an increase there in expenditures. So that accounted for majority of the public safety expenditure increase there, the jail and EMS. Human services, and this kind of correlates with your restricted and governmental, so you can see an increase here as well. So it's timing of the grant, since it's federal and state driven here. So human service expenditures is such DSS, your health department, various things like that. So you had an increase there of about 3%, or $330,000 to roughly 11.8 million. Education expenditures, roughly very, very comparable to the prior year, came in at close to 8.6 million. Slight decrease here, and main cause for that is less timber receipts in the current year that has passed through the school system as well.
Liz, what type of receipts?
Timber receipts, yes, sir. decrease of about $99,000 from the prior year in timber receipts. And then just to touch base on your enterprise fund here, your solid waste, you can see your comparatives of the 2016 and 2017. Decrease in cash there is for the landfill expansion project, that large capital construction in progress that you had in 2017. So that was the main decrease in why the cash decreased there. Overall had positive gains in your net income on budgetary basis and GAAP basis. There, cash flow from operations, over $900,000, and then your unrestricted net position, that is basically your available fund balance if you want to kind of compare it to your general fund there. So that is positive as well, almost close to $2 million there in your solid waste fund. But that's kind of a snapshot in time. Overall, general fund had positive increases there. Solid waste, so overall a very good year, and thanks to Lori again.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Matt.
All right, thank
Where
you.
you from, Matt?
I am from Hickory, or our office, Martin Starr and Associates office is in Hickory. I actually live in Lenore. So, but that's
nice
where I'm
place.
from. Yes, sir. Lived there my entire life.
Thank you, Matt.
What
Thank-
high school did you go to?
I went to West Caldwell High School. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
3A?
2A.
Now, it used to be 3A.
When I was there, it was 2A. I actually went to the High Brighton football game when Franklin played them there. I was actually playing for Franklin, but we won't say that.
They won the state championship.
They did. That's the West Caldwell's big rival, and so I always pull against them. My wife went to High Brighton, so that's a big thing there.
Is that close to Alexander Central?
About 30 minutes.
So you're gonna email this out?
Yeah, I'll email the
That'll
presentation.
be good
to
for
you
our work
tomorrow.
session.
Yeah.
And if you have any other questions, anything like that, and if Lori needs to contact me or you need to contact us, feel free to do so. We'll do whatever or discuss anything that we need to.
Main thing is, Matt, what you said earlier, we appreciate what Martin Starr does, but we have an excellent finance department.
You do. And the thing is, they take pride in it. A lot of people think that financial statements and the state statutes that you have to follow and all that stuff is not necessarily important. But me as an auditor and people, citizens, that is a big deal. And so it's always nice to go into a place that takes pride in there, just like I take pride in my work. So
I'm blessed.
very good, very good.
All right, Matt, I'll ask a favor of you.
Yes, sir.
Remember that when you give us your pricing for this year. We seem to have an automatic increase every year.
And
It does
I
not-
wasn't
it does
gonna.
not sit well with us, I can tell you.
I was not gonna bring that up tonight, but since you did, unfortunately, there's gonna be some changes in that, and we can thank Beth Wood, the state auditor, and different things like that. There's some, the single audit is changing again. So we'll discuss this if we need to, however we need to. The direct benefit payments are coming off of your schedule and federal state awards. So what that means to you is that the major programs that we have to test is going to grow substantially. So it's going to go from, if you look in your compliance reports, we tested 3 or 4 programs. Next year it's going to be 7 or maybe 8.
Those lobbyists,
Maybe
those
9.
lobbyists is earning his money.
Yes, so that, more programs and more time, and so that's something we're still kind of in the trying to see how much extra time this is really going to take. So that's something to keep on your radar as well. And then you also will have an AUP more than likely, because the state auditor, since the direct benefit payments are coming off of the CFA, that means Medicaid and WIC and programs like that are not going to be major programs. But for the state auditor, they're going to still select those and make us test whatever they want to test. And they are going to set that as a separate engagement. So there's still a lot of unknowns, so I don't want to speculate too much on if it's going to, so just keep that on your radar.
We're good people, and we're obviously poor, so keep that in mind.
I will definitely relay it, and I like working with good people, so I will do my best, what I can do.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Y'all have a good evening. Good
Be
night.
careful.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Be careful.
All right, item B, Cowee School Arts and Heritage Center. Progress
All
report,
right.
mid-year
Good
review.
news.
Mr. McCollum, appreciate your,
Contentious here, gentlemen.
appreciate your patience with us.
Ms. Hall, gentlemen, thank y'all for giving me a little spot on the agenda. I can't believe everybody left before the exciting update on the Arts and Heritage Center.
They'll be in just any minute.
They don't know what they
They're on-
missed.
They're on their way back.
Y'all have a packed agenda. I'll be very brief tonight. We had a great year down at the school, and we certainly appreciate the county's continuing support down there. I'm just spots here. This year, our user visits, that's everybody that comes to the door that we can count, is up 2,000 from last year. We're within just a few, we're up from 7,000 to 9,000 user visits this year. We can't count the people that come use the facility on the weekends for baseball and birthday parties and use the track. So these numbers are conservative.
Did the solar eclipse, did it do anything?
We had 600, roughly 600 more people at the festival this year, which was the Saturday before the eclipse, and a lot of those people were folks visiting here, and they came to so that's what bumped us up there. We've received or will be getting a large grant from the Cherokee Preservation Foundation to do a lot of stuff at the school there. They're going to be designing our own exhibit particular to the Cowee Mound Town area instead of the one that we have now that travels around the country. It's very general. This will be very specific, and they've granted us money for the development and the construction of that, so we won't be out any funds on that. The Community Foundation of Western North Carolina, we've caught their attention. They set aside money for training for nonprofit organizations, usually much larger than we are. They're quite interested in the fact that we have a business incubator aspect to our nonprofit, and so they're giving us $7,500 to do training, and we need that. I will tell you, I knew nothing about operating a nonprofit organization when I came to this board, and so we're going to get some good training that will hopefully help us as we go forward. Again, in the interest of time, everybody got copies of this, didn't you? Okay. We had a little water system blip down there. We had a bad water test down there, and let me commend Steve Ledford and his folks. They jumped right on that, and within 5 days we had a new system ordered and installed, and we've passed multiple county and state tests. Everything is good at the school down there. We really expanded our fourth grader visits. We like to give them North Carolina and Cherokee there because that's in the fourth grade curriculum there. So we're trying to expand that to every fourth grade class in the county and on the travel property. Let's see. We've got 2 new tenants this year. One was the Cherokee room that went in, and that's the finished product room next year is really going to be something to see. And down Memory Lane Toy Museum took up one of the spots that the museum gave up one of their rooms down there. And I'm happy to report that we incubated and graduated our first business this year, Happy Go Lucky Foods. A young lady started out in her own kitchen at home and needed more space, and she rented from the school, and she's now building her own commercial kitchen where she lives in Jackson County, and she's hired 2 employees. So we're very proud of that. We hope that we can continue that. We've got a nice booth out at the Chamber of Commerce building. I hope y'all had a chance to go out there and check that out. One big addition we're going to have next year is the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Department of Environment and Natural Resources is currently advertising for a full-time position to put in Macon County to oversee and be a liaison with county and town government, with the school, and to oversee the projects that are going to take place at the Hall Farm property, where I believe I'm safe in saying they're going to put in a raptor aviary and rescue center is their current project there. That'll be open to the public and become a destination. Restoration and aviary is very important to them culturally and spiritually in Cherokee. And so they think this property is great for that. And of course, there's the development that's going to take place at the old Dan's Auto Building in town. That person is going to be housed at the Cowee School, and they'll be paying rent on their office space there. But they've given us money to upgrade the office place down there. So we're not gonna be out anything on that. I think you'll see we have a great list of partners there that we interact with. And I can't come here without praising Stacy Guffey, whose experience is in grant writing and communicating with and knowing how to operate with this wide variety of partners and granting entities here. We couldn't go there without him. His experience and knowledge in all this is vast, and so I really sing his praises here. I do have a few. The third page there is our income and expense statement by month. Let me go ahead and address April, because somebody's going to see that and say something there. We've got a lot of money going out there. This year we added the new outdoor stage. That was almost $7,000. This was not a grant where we got the money up front and then spent it. We built the stage with our funds, then turn in our receipts to the Blue Ridge National Heritage Area, and they reimbursed us for that construction. So a lot of that money going out in April, if you'll look down, comes back to us in October when we finally get the money there. April's also a time when we're buying advertising for the upcoming concerts too, so that's the time of year we have a lot of money. Now, we improved over the year. We did a lot of things at the school, and we ended up with about $4,000 above our balance from last year, which is our safety net. When things come along like the outdoor stage construction, we need to have support in hand for matching grants and opportunities that come up like this. Questions, anybody?
Give yourself a pat on the back. Another successful year.
Well, it has been a good year at school. I have a couple of requests to make. I'd like to ask for another meeting as we do our strategic plan and you gentlemen go into budget talks. Mr. Beal is our liaison, and one of the other board members, Paul, came last year, to have another brief meeting with you as soon as we formulate a strategic plan, to meet with you and see how that fits with the county.
Now, one thing, Bob, before you sit down.
Okay.
We've talked about, the handicap ramp.
That's one of the
We've all
requests.
received letters concerning that handicap ramp, and, Dave, where's that stand? What's the latest on that handicap? You said to take it.
The latest on the handicap ramp that I've heard is I know that Jack and Steve went out there and measured and have looked at what they're gonna need to meet the building code. It's my understanding that that project is about to get into the works after
There was money in that budget is better.
after we went and measured that. I think we were able to find the money in the building improvements budget.
So it's very important to us, because when we go after federal grants anymore, when you apply for those, a facility like ours, they send someone out to inspect for ADA compliance now. And so before we go after those bits of money out there, it's the right thing to do too. The ramp that is there now is usable. It's starting to fall apart, and we've shored it up. It would not pass now. No. Let's see, what else was I on? Well, for the meeting, see if we can't.
You'll do that in March,
move
Bobby?
on. That'd be fine.
March, will you be
Yeah,
prepared
because
for
we'll do our strategic plan the end of this month.
So we'll start ours with Saturday night.
Plus, we hope to have this training that the WNC group is going to give us to help us train to be
What's
better.
y'all's regular meeting? You know.
We meet on the, come on, Bob, third Monday morning of each month at 7 a.m. at Sunset Restaurant.
Think you can make that an evening meeting?
Yes, we can.
So plan on the third Monday in March?
That'd be, yes,
In the evening?
in the evening.
7 o'clock?
At 7 o'clock. Okay. And the other thing that I have to ask for here is approval by the board for the other half of our funding for this fiscal year. We originally talked about $40,000 for the entire year, and we're gonna forego, we're just gonna ask for the money that covers our halftime administration position there. So that would be 36,000 instead of 40, so I would be asking for the other half, or 18,000 of that, to be approved for this next 6 months. But not tonight, at your discretion, but to ask that that be done in a timely fashion so that we can draw
Money in
on
the
it.
budget to pay.
I looked at the budget today because I saw this update on here. that
That's
were
right.
contracted, so it's gone, cause that covered July through December.
Right.
There's money in we're still paying the electricity bills and the gas bills out there. It looks like there's enough money in that line to carry them through the end of the fiscal year. And then they had a little bit in the maintenance, which I guess is what you're talking about, maybe they could buy material to build that ramp. I don't remember how much it was, but
Yeah.
that was pretty much the only 3 line items that they had money in this year.
Do you need a budget amendment to carry it?
They would need 18,000, like he's saying, if they're gonna continue their contracted services.
And you plan on,
We do.
And we have 125,000 in contingency, and we have spent 0 year to date.
so do we need to go ahead and approve that board, or what's your, Chairman?
Paul, you're the liaison. Are you and Paul?
Well, I would recommend that, since we had this discussion when we started, that we've come back at this, and we can't hardly wait till March, it's 2 more months, so, according to Lori. So I make a motion that we approve, the 18,000, to carry him on through this fiscal year.
And take it out of.
From contingency.
From contingency.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5 ayes, Chair.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Again, let me thank y'all for your support out there and know that everybody involved. I work with great board members. We have great board members out there, and we're all headed in the same direction. And I will tell you that the board or commission I've ever served on that was like that. Thank you for your,
So we're,
Bobby.
thank you for your
we'll
time.
be in touch about the 3rd Monday in March.
Okay.
Sherman or Paul or whoever.
Third Monday in March, 7.
And if anything's different, about the handicap ramp,
Right.
I'll get with you.
Okay.
Regardless, I'll get in touch with you and give you an update on where we
But
stand.
that grant
as far as
application, we
getting
talked
started.
about, probably would do that in late spring.
The cycle on that for us will be May, so there's plenty of time. But of course, before our first major event, which will be, we'll start having the concerts out there.
We'd like
That's
to
when-
pitch that in Washington too.
Yeah.
And that's in first week in March, so we need to at least have, I think we have the plans in order and have everything, say we're gonna do it, and we can pitch it a little bit better too.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank each of you for your service to your community here. This is not an easy job.
Thank you, Bob.
See you,
Bobby,
Bobby.
don't spend your money on training on parking attendants, because you got.
That's funny. Thank you, Bobby.
That's funny.
All right, 2.5 hours in, and we're just now getting to whole business. It's a pretty good job, and maybe a record. I'm gonna just tell you, if y'all need to get up and go to the bathroom or something, just slip out like I did, and we'll keep trucking, just to keep us moving. Item A, under old business discussion regarding amended tire recycling contract with US Tire. 3-minute time limit, go.
Good time to go to the bathroom. Good time to go to the bathroom.
You want me to take it?
Take that gravel and then
Certainly.
Gentlemen, in a nutshell, you had authorized, after taking a request for proposal, Chris made a recommendation for US Tire to be awarded. I think they were the only show in town, if I'm not mistaken. The RFP called for a 1-year contract with 2 1-year renewal options. When the contract came from US Tire, it was a 5-year contract with 2 1-year renewal options. And we had discussion with them and basically said, that's not what we put out for proposal. And they said, well, that's what we bid on, and that's what we priced it based on. If you want it, for a shorter period of time, it's gonna cost you more. Spoke with Chris about it, spoke with county manager about it, and Chris has actually found some advantages of going with a 5-year contract under the current regulatory circumstances. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as a consequence, he's recommending that you go forward with the 5-year contract with 2-year renewal options.
Any questions from the board?
These are, all the other terms that were previously approved by the board of the site. It's just the time.
I glanced through it. Nothing caught my eye. We'll get a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the 5-year and 2 1-year
Renewal options.
renewal options. Make that motion.
Get a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We did it. Item B, consideration of memorandum of understanding with Macon County Board of Education regarding South Macon Elementary School expansion. Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, in a nutshell, what you have here, the school board has the right to, under general statute, to select the architect for work upon its building or any other project for that matter. However, as you know, the way we have handled school projects, we've been doing the construction for them. We found that to be advantageous both to the county as well as the school board. And so there's a little bit of conflict there. If we're going to be hiring an architect, we have to approve that architect as well. In this particular situation, what we did is, through good work of the liaison, of this board with the school board, as well as the county manager, the architect was evaluated by both the school board as well as this county. And this is a memorandum of understanding, basically stating that the parties will work together on this project together, and that the school board is in fact happy with and accepting of the architect that the county has approved. That enables us to move forward in a contract negotiation with the architectural firm that has been selected as the most qualified firm.
Need a motion to approve the memorandum?
As liaison, Mr. Shields can speak to, we did have a liaison committee meeting with the schools, and this was the main topic of discussion, and this is the same architect firm that has done the rest of the schools, the last two new schools, and they've done a good job, what we think is a reasonable price, and so Mr. Shields can speak to it, but we both agreed with the school board that this would be, they take a very hard interest in what we're doing, and they've always seemed to be professional, and so the liaison committee approves of the resolution and the consent, and that's a motion.
Second.
Memorandum of understanding.
We get any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Item C, resolution exempting surveying services.
Likewise, this is a situation involving the South Macon School as part and parcel of the architectural work as well as the actual work that's involved. There's some surveying that will be required for this project. As we are required to put out architectural services and engineering services, that same statute says you're supposed to put out surveying services as well under our request for proposal unless you exempt that matter. And the statute specifically provides for projects where the cost is going to be under $50,000, the board may in writing exempt that particular project. This case is going to be $6,500 or less. Is that not correct?
Yes, and to speak to that, we did have a liaison committee meeting, as Mr. Beal had mentioned. These surveying services that are being requested and we have to have for our architect prior to starting construction on this project, it's a fairly detailed survey, which includes locating all utilities above and below grade with elevations along with pipe size and material, existing trees, size and type, site improvements, survey point data, etc. Essentially, what this $6,500 was at first was there was some discussion prior to our liaison committee meeting and us getting back together with the representatives from the school board that this project, aside from encompassing an expansion of the school itself and the work on the cafeteria as we have discussed and looked at in RFP, they were also going to make some improvements to the front of the property, to the main entrance off of Addington Bridge Road. There's wetlands up here. They started looking into it. This area that they were going to require the same surveying services for is the same size as the area that would be required to be surveyed for expansion. So in discussions with the architect said, you know, this is going to be a very significant expenditure added onto this project. If you move forward, we discussed it again at the liaison committee meeting and felt like that we could do without it and still accomplish what we're trying to accomplish with this renovation project. So I say all that to say the scope at the time that this proposal was submitted for $6,500 was 2 times the size that it is now. So it will be substantially less than $6,500.
The exemption is to obviate the need to go through a request for qualification. I misspoke earlier. It's not proposal qualification, request for qualification. Is to avoid the expense associated with that on a small project.
We'll get a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second. Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Item D, extension of lease agreement.
The county presently has a lease agreement with the community college, SEC, for the burn building. That lease is due to expire at the end of this month. Of course, we are in the process of discussing the building of a new burn building, perhaps in a new location. But until that's done, this existing burn building needs to be available for use by SEC. I would propose to this board sort of an extension, if you will, to extend the current lease an additional 5 years with the additional stipulation that during that 5-year period, either party may cancel the same upon 30 days notice to the other. So in other words, if we get this built in 2 years, we're going to end that lease.
Sounds good.
And in that regard, we would need to authorize county manager to enter into that lease with the community college. And it may be that the North Carolina Department of Administration has to be a party to that as well. But I think they may have to approve this lease.
We'll get a motion to approve the extension of lease agreement
But did we
for
do
the
this?
burn building.
But did we do this last board meeting?
No, I just brought it to
we
your
raised the issue about something that needed to be done.
The 5 year, okay. I'll make the motion that the 5 year, and we feel like that was a time frame there that we could adapt.
That should cover us
Yes.
for the construction period and then some, and with the understanding that either party may end it on a 30-day notice to the other.
Allowing Derek to enter into the agreement for us.
Yes.
So, get a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Finally, new business. Item A, distribution of proposed amendments to the animal control ordinance. Mr. Jim Bruckner. Welcome, Jim. Thanks for your patience.
We
Put that in the
sent
budget
this
for
out to
recliners.
you, with your board packet, when you have a copy. That we can read the- I'm here just tonight to present for board approval changes to the animal control ordinance. As I said, they were sent to you in your packet for this meeting, but if you didn't get to look at that, you have now a hard copy. The changes that we've made to this are mostly cosmetic changes around definitions and clarification of some of the original language from questions that we get from consumers now that we've had animal control for 2 years at the health department. We've gotten a lot of questions about the ordinance, and we're trying to clarify some of that. Our intent is not to change the original intent of the ordinance or anything that was contained in the ordinance. We have vetted this through the county attorney, and Jimmy Villiard and I in animal control made the changes. We took it to the Board of Health back in September, and on a motion by Dr. Todd, who's the veterinarian on the Board of Health, they unanimously approved or validated all of the changes that you have in your hand right now. So basically, we're requesting a review and consideration by this board, and hopefully approval at your next meeting. The document that you have in front of you. If you have any questions, you all know my phone number and my email. I'd be happy to answer any between now and then, in hopes that we can get it through.
Public hearing, Chester.
I don't think a public hearing will be required here. However, I would want to remind this board, especially those that were here at the time that animal control was moved to the health department. We did some amendments to the ordinance, and they were sort of a Band-Aid approach at that moment to get animal control under the health department. At the time we did that, both Mr. Bruckner and myself pointed out to this board that we would be coming back to you for some additional amendments that we could see needed to be made. As you will recall, that decision to move to the health department came rather quick and needed to be done very quickly so that we wouldn't have a lapse in animal control in Macon County. They have since worked, he and Jimmy Villiard have worked diligently in trying to come up with those things that he and I had discussed needed to be changed. And they have involved me in that process, and I have reviewed their work.
Although it's not required to have a public hearing, just kind of going back to where we started our meeting, would it be prudent to have a public meeting to seek out citizens' thoughts on this, given this is an ordinance and change to ordinance?
I think there was a person here tonight that you helped out. They were here for this purpose. They're not here now, but they were here for the purpose of the information on this, so you may be right.
The only observation I would make is these changes were not designed to be what would be material changes to the ordinance. It was more of terminology to get it more correct in the operating environment of the health department, technical types of changes, if you will. And that's the reason I encouraged the health director to bring the ordinance to you tonight in a red line strikeout version. Let you take a look at it, and you know, if you come back next month and say, now there's material changes in here as well that we want the public to weigh in on, then you might ask for a public hearing. But on changing the name of for example, an animal control officer or what is the lead?
The lead animal control officer.
Yeah, there's some things like that in there that we're dealing with, and I'm not sure the public's gonna be terribly interested in it.
But then there is some additional items that's been added as well.
There's no question there have been, but I think you're gonna find that the most of it is for clarification.
It's points of clarification.
Expense, though, it'd just be advertising, expense.
You'd need to advertise and there need to be a timetable.
Jim, I think the improvements you made here is really good today. I mean, I think it clarifies a lot of the things, like the dangerous dog, for instance. I mean, that's been all over the lot, so to speak. So I
We put
think
a lot of work in that, didn't we, Jim?
Yeah, we did.
I think the changes it's made has made it more readable
And we've gone back, for informational purposes, in many of those instances, we've gone back to statutory language rather than having county drafted
and have it
language.
vague.
Yes.
I mean, I read it pretty good, so it's, the changes I've seen is all, it's mostly just defining what was there, making it more simpler and making it, whose responsibility is whose.
And
So,
trying
I
to.
think y'all did a good job with it.
But is your dangerous dog board?
No, there's a separate ordinance about the dangerous dog board, and like the dangerous dog component in that, it wasn't exactly the same language in that as in the general statute, and it made it challenging to explain dangerous dog to people. It's much
Well, you
easier to
had
pull the general
ambiguity
statute out.
between your
Yeah.
ordinance
Well, you
and
got
the
into the
general
vicious
statute.
animal thing.
Yeah.
The dangerous dog, the vicious animal, and on down the line, so.
Well, and the biggest, I think the biggest thing in there is probably animal cruelty. Because since we've taken over animal control, we've done a lot of things around investigating what animal cruelty officers do and how they're appointed, and after John Hook left and we reappointed Justin, Chester and I went back and we reviewed the general statutes around animal cruelty, and that's probably the biggest change in there, is because we took everything in there about animal cruelty out, except for the one sentence in there that allows it, the way the general statute is written, is any citizen can make an animal cruelty complaint to the magistrate. It doesn't have to be an appointed individual by the county.
And believe it or not, the animal cruelty officer can't be an employee.
Can't be an employee of the county, and has to be an independent person, paid separately by the county for their services, where in reading the general statute, any individual in the county can file an animal cruelty complaint.
Correct.
However, we have 3 animal control officers and the attendant in animal control, who all can, as employees of the county, not be appointed an animal cruelty officer, but can investigate animal cruelty complaints and carry them all the way through the entire legal process, just like an animal cruelty officer can, without appointing them. So we've taken all that language out of there, except for the fact that any animal control officer can file an animal cruelty complaint.
Carl, you wanna make a motion? How you gonna do that?
I think the intent was to deliver this ordinance, give you a chance to look
Read
at
it
it,
first.
read it, and
Not read it
if
first.
you were inclined to act on it, bring it back up at the next meeting to discuss it further or to act on it.
I'd like to see, because it's an ordinance, I would like to see a public hearing. I understand there's costs associated with that, but I would like to.
So for that to happen then, would that, we just need to.
When do
would
you
that
want the
start at
public
next
hearing?
meeting? I'd say as soon as possible.
At the February meeting,
That would be fine.
I'll
The
prepare
public have time to review this, or will it be all like that other stuff, all a bunch of stuff go out there that is not true? I mean,
Well, I think probably what we may want to do is we may want to go ahead and see if we can't get this posted to the internet, to the county's website. And we'll, in the notice of public hearing, we'll notify the public that if they want to read it, it'll be available there.
Because those 2 people came in tonight, so it's the lady, she was expected something to be handed to her. Ms. Tate made some copies of this. And I'm not sure it satisfied anything, but they were here for
that reason.
For that reason.
So does that need to be in a motion, or?
The board does need to approve the calling of a public hearing
Okay.
at the February regular meeting, and I'll prepare the necessary advertisement for that.
I make a motion that we put this on the agenda for a February meeting.
And I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good. Thanks, Jim. Satisfaction of security instrument. Mr. Attorney, again. you don't get
Yes,
hoarse.
there are housing programs, as y'all are probably familiar with here in Macon County, where one is the CDBG Scattered Site Housing Program, and I think what we do there is we help and assist people bring their housing up to standard. In this particular case, an individual by the name of Mary Estelle Bradley had borrowed some money, and under the terms of that program, the note and deed of trust is to be canceled after a certain period of time if there has been compliance. I was speaking with John Fay. Mr. Fay advises that the conditions for loan forgiveness have come to pass, and it's time to cancel this security agreement. I've prepared requisite satisfaction of security instrument and emailed the same to you. Just need a motion to approve that document if you're inclined to do so.
motion to approve the instrument, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve.
If we could get Mr. Tate and Mr. Rowland to sign that tonight, there's a closing that's counting on this document.
We have a second by Shields. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go pass that down. Somebody, I'll sign away. Schedule date for mid-year review of budget kickoff work session. Mr. County Manager.
Yes, right now, it's coming up mid-year. We usually have our budget kickoff around the 1st of February. Last year, we had it around the same time. This is will be, of course, where the budget calendar is distributed to the Board of Commissioners. We have a mid-year review, kind of where we are this year in terms of the projects we're working on and fulfilling the obligations that have been placed upon us by the current year budget, as well as giving the board an opportunity to look into next fiscal year and begin setting our goals for the forthcoming fiscal year. This will also entail the presentation of, for the first time to you, the rough draft of the capital improvement plan. I say it's a rough draft because it will not be a final draft till this board has many discussions regarding projects, prioritization, and gets all the questions you have answered before moving forward. So that will be the purpose of the meeting. And right now, I am thinking a proposed date that we have at this time would be February the 2nd, which is the last Friday, or the first Friday in February, at like we did last year. That would be on a Friday. Have it at 11:30. We would serve lunch here from 11:30 to 12, and then meet from 12:35.
What date again?
February 2nd, Groundhog Day.
Will we have the CIP at that time, or will we have it prior to that time?
Yes, you'll have the CIP at that time, as well as we'll have somebody again from Davenport here to go over that CIP with us. So we'll be covering a lot in that meeting. 11:30, yes.
11:30.
If that would be acceptable to the board.
In the boardroom, right?
Yes, in this boardroom.
I will be out of town at a meeting at Thursday and Friday morning in Greensboro, so John, go ahead and have it. You know, I'm already booked, I'm actually a speaker at the meeting. John, go ahead and have it.
What are the other dates? You said you're out Thursday and Friday?
What the following one?
The next date, February 9th.
31st?
What works for you? That's what we'll.
Oh, just all about me?
Yeah, we'll cancel everything we got.
How about the 31st?
February 9th would be, we were looking at the first week in February. That's kind of the deadline that we've given our consultants working on the CIP. And we've kind of checked their availability, and I think Lori and I were thinking if we could do it the 1st of February, that would give us just a little more time to get everything we need
Y'all
prepared.
do it on another day beside that same week, beside the Friday? I mean.
Yeah, we could do it.
So I was saying the 31st is Wednesday.
We could do it
Tuesday the 6th.
Are there 31 days in this February?
31 in January.
Well,
Jim was saying January 31st, which is that Wednesday.
But they really want to.
They might not be ready, is it?
Well, it will be the first. It'll be that Friday is the 2nd, so we can, Lord, we can double check with. Do you think we could go ahead and set that and then just tell them what they got to do?
Oh, no, that's fine with me too.
You want to do it?
What about the 9th?
The 2nd, Tuesday, any of that week.
Paul, what about the 9th?
About what?
The 9th.
Check with me the 7th and I'll let you know, Carl.
I'll check with you. Good. I'm checking, Paul. Jump to.
So is the 9th?
Booking agent.
Where we at? You're the 9th or the 2nd?
The
The
9th.
9th, but I don't know if Paul will be there.
Do you have
Well, if you're not
availability the
gonna be
9th?
here on the 9th, then why
Still
not
be
the
open.
2nd?
I think
Are you good with the 9th, Mr. Shields?
Yeah, I'm good with the 9th, but if Paul's not gonna be on the 9th, why not the
No,
2nd?
he's not gonna be here on the 2nd.
Oh, you messed me up.
Who's on first?
The 9th.
You messed me up.
Paul can't do the 2nd. He can do the 9th.
Won't put it in the form of an ordinance, we'll all understand it.
Yeah,
Give us
all
the
right.
9th there.
All right, February 9th.
11:30.
So we'll need to recess this meeting. Okay.
February 9th.
Yeah, I think the 13th is the regular meeting day.
It is.
Okay.
You'll send us a reminder.
Oh, yeah.
Send it to you in the hotel room.
All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Unless there's something one of the board members would like to pull out, we'll look for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve?
Where are we at?
Consent agenda.
We on the 9th or the?
Consent
Nine.
agenda.
Consent agenda.
We're
Consent
past
agenda.
that.
I second.
Got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and we have an appointment suggested by the Town of Franklin for Janet Green as the Town of Franklin Planning Board, ETJ representative.
Make a recommendation, we accept that recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
Just a caveat there, if you'll notice, if you read that close, it's just a one-year appointment. It's usually a 3-year appointment, but it's just a 1-year appointment that Janet requested, so just need to keep that in mind.
I think there is a need for a closed session. Chester, are you expecting any action?
Do not, this would be for the purpose of preserving the attorney-client privilege, and I would not expect any.
All right, so we will come out of closed session in 5 minutes
In recess.
and recess
To
until
the
February the
9th.
9th at, where's it gonna be?
11:30 here.
Here, right
5
here.
West Lane,
Okay.
Commissioner's Court.
Franklin, North Carolina.
All right, I need a motion to go into closed session.
So
please.
moved.
Got a motion by Bill, a second by Gillespie, all in favor?
Aye.